Chapter 519. This was all Luo Nan could do in regards to Worker Zhai's leap from 0 to 1 of the Dragon's Gate. Perhaps turning Worker Zhai into a member of his closed production line would greatly speed up the process. But what was the point of this pointless efficiency? Luo Nan patted Worker Zhai on the shoulder and stood up. After a slight hesitation, she stuffed the notebook in her hands into his hands. Perhaps the randomness of pure craftsmanship would help Worker Zhai struggle out of his excessive pursuit of precision. Worker Zhai raised his head and smiled at Luo Nan. He was not polite. He picked up the digital pen and began to draw up and down in the working area of the drawing software. Disregarding everything else, his body language was much more relaxed. Luo Nan shifted his gaze. Brother Papercut, don't just sit around. You've also trained in the condensation ring. Come over and talk to Worker Zhai. Papercut had been looking at the translucent water droplets penetrating the curtain of rain in a daze. After he came to his senses, he spat. Only a ghost has ever practiced it. Cough. Even if he did, it would be for fun. Though he said this, he still came over obediently. He sat in Luo Nan's previous seat and watched Worker Zhai draw. At this moment, Di Weiwu had also recovered from the excitement of witnessing mental magic with his own eyes. His eyes were shining, and he had an expression that said, I don't understand it at all, but it's so interesting. Someone, hurry up and teach me. However, he had just expressed his disdain for this sort of cultivation method. In the end, he didn't have the face to spit it out in a short amount of time. He simply made his way between his godfather and Papercut, staring closely at Luo Nan's loose-leaf notebook. He wanted to find a possible mechanism within it. Since the three of them were together, Luo Nan no longer disturbed them. He smiled at Dean Wantar and said, let's go through the formalities. Luo Nan was talking about the continuation of Rui Wen's relationship transfer. Actually, it was more or less done in the administrative hall. Luo Nan was just saying this to give Worker Zhai some space and to chat with Dean Wantar. Forget about the procedures. I think what you should do now is to have a good sleep. Dean Wantar's words were almost the same as Qin Ikuan's advice in the car. Obviously, Luo Nan's exhausted appearance had reached the point where everyone could see it. At this moment, Qin Ikuan nodded at the side, expressing that Dean Wan's words had deeply resonated with him. Luo Nan grinned, but he didn't say much. He led Rui Wen inside. Wantar stopped persuading him and directly called the nanny of the orphanage to complete the last part of the procedures. It took a total of 5 minutes. At this time, Worker Zhai and the others had not made any breakthroughs. Luo Nan could not come and go in a hurry, so he stayed in the reception room and chatted with Wantar. Rui Wen sat quietly by Luo Nan's side. Qin Ikuan wandered around the room, appreciating the first-rate design effects. Luo Nan could not help but let out a yawn in the time it took to say a few words. A black tide surged before his eyes, and his mind grew more and more absent-minded. Just now, when he had helped Worker Zhai change his train of thought, he had boosted his spirit and gotten a little excited. Now that the excitement had passed, he felt even more tired. The Dean of Myriad Pagoda was making tea for Luo Nan and the others. She said leisurely when she saw this, forcibly going against the nature of matter is never pleasant. With such a heavy burden on you right now, once you suffer a backlash, the consequences will be even more serious. Luo Nan's eyelids twitched when he heard this, but he didn't completely open them in the end. It was also Wantar's fault. The reception room he designed had maximized the livability and comfort factor. Sitting on the old sofa, one's body would feel soft and unconsciously relaxed. But now was absolutely not the time for him to relax. He couldn't sleep no matter what. Right now, the entire world was watching Xia City. Countless ability users were rushing over. Since it was unknown whether Jin Tong was alive or dead, these people held quite a bit of wishful thinking. The more wishful thinking they were, the more dangerous it was. Luo Nan knew that he was walking on a tightrope, but he believed that his limit was far from being reached. Wait a bit more. Wait a bit more. Wait until a sufficient number of people came in, and they entered this large net woven by the freezing rain. The hexa ear vibrated slightly, and Luo Nan's telepathy swept over. He was dazed for a moment before he confirmed the relevant information. It was the OK hand signal sent by the octopus. Luo Nan responded, thanks. I'll go get it from you in a bit. Don't forget that this is Shangding. This short sentence displayed the grief and indignation of the researchers who had been forcibly transferred. Luo Nan laughed for a moment. Only then did he hear Wan Ta's voice enter his ears. The sensitivity of nerve cells to information will decrease under a state of suppression. If something goes wrong right now, it will be very hard for you to react. This isn't decided by the range of your senses. Luo Nan quivered. His eyelids completely opened as he looked at Wan Ta. This sentence was much more straightforward than the previous one. This leader of the Order of Creators clearly had a certain understanding of the current state of affairs. Moreover, he was aware of a deeper level of information. Luo Nan looked at Wan Ta. Qin Ikuan, who had turned to the corner of the reception room, cast a stunned gaze toward Luo Nan. The bodyguard also heard some clues from Wan Ta's words, but he still didn't dare to make a rash judgment. Wan Ta noticed the change in Qin Ikuan's expression. His brows slightly furrowed. Only now did he realize that Luo Nan's actions were actually hidden from even his own bodyguard. His previous words were a bit careless. Luo Nan laughed and sighed at this time. This is a helpless move. However, even you, Dean Wan, know about it. The speed at which news spreads is truly beyond imagination. Wan Ta laughed when he saw that Luo Nan didn't care. But his following words were a bit more conservative. The Starry Sky Club is the outer circle of the inner world. Relevant missions have indeed been posted. Especially this morning. Information related to 16 billion and 2 out of 1,000 was posted all over the high-level mission area of the club. However, the Xia City branch should have already exerted pressure. They have already been cleaned up. Rue Wen raised her eyes from beside Luo Nan when he mentioned the words 2 out of 1,000. Her gaze streaked across Wan Ta's face. It was like an incorporeal strike that tore apart the light in the room. Then everything returned to normal. Wan Ta was a bit startled. Luo Nan followed up with a topic, only on the surface, right? Yes, that's right. There should still be people on the internal dark network. People have sent out employment invitations to religious people like me. Wan Ta was magnanimous. He only treated this information as a topic of conversation. It could also be considered a reminder. Luo Nan actually already had a relevant concept. He Yueyin had always been sending him relevant information, allowing him to have an intuitive understanding of the situation. Compared to this, he still wanted to discuss a more realistic problem with Wan Ta. It's inevitable that people will be restless. However, Dean Wan. Is it really that easy to see through matters related to coverage? That's not true. Wan Ta was a researcher and preacher. He didn't have much interest in secular matters. Seeing that Luo Nan didn't mind, Wan Ta took the initiative to bring up relevant matters. Wan Ta turned to this domain. Pure interference on the microscopic level doesn't have much of an effect. Others might not be able to detect it. It's just that evil thoughts and killing intent are too much. This sort of negative emotion is like dust pollution. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just a general idea. I understand. Luo Nan nodded toward Wan Ta. They were talking about the condensation ring as the core of the soul cloak, which was the interference scene. It was also the substantial background of the freezing rain in Xia City. Luo Nan paid abnormal attention to the concealment of the soul cloak. This was because it involved not only his plans in Xia City, but also his goals in the cloud world. From last night until now, everything about this toy was good. The only thing lacking was its concealment. This made Luo Nan a bit worried. After all, he had used the soul cloak to monitor Gong Qi for a long time in the cloud world. If the concealment was unreliable, then a considerable portion of the information he received over the past few days would be wrong. Luo Nan no longer cared about Qin Ikuan's thoughts. He followed Wan Ta's words and made some adjustments. Then he asked, "What about now?" Wan Ta shook his head. "Since I already know, there's no reason to overlook it. You and I may be in the lawful camp, but the orders we rely on are different. It's hard to avoid conflicting senses. As for the source, if you hadn't come personally, it would have been hard for me to lock onto it. This doesn't seem like your true core order. The binding force it gives off isn't that strong." "Yes. I mostly use it to sense and gather information." Luo Nan was a bit disappointed with the concealment of the soul cloak, but he had no other choice. He could only pay attention to it in the future. Then he sighed with emotion. "It's convenient to use, but the pressure is a bit great. Luo Nan remembered what Peony had said to him during the incident at the municipal plaza. It was an enormous challenge for any psychic ability user to gather information from several 100,000 people at once. A bad move might even result in a backlash. Back then, Luo Nan used his unique clairvoyance mode to greatly reduce the relevant information. He extracted the essentials of the information and resolved this problem. The range of Luo Nan's mental senses, supported by the soul cloak, no longer covered the municipal plaza. It covered the vast expanse of Xia City and its surrounding regions. This was an enormous plate of information spanning nearly 100,000 square kilometers and over 200 million people. Even with the simplification and filtering effects of the life sketches, the enormous amount of information far exceeded the limits of what Luo Nan could handle. An unending supply of soul strength did not mean that there was no limit to the heart's strength. In fact, the heart's strength was rooted in the foundation of the human skeleton. The brain consumed energy at every moment, and at the same time, it emitted waste heat. There was an upper limit to the operating speed of this low-end version of the biological computer. The source lay in the material structure of the brain. Even though Luo Nan's physical fitness was incomparable to the past, far exceeding that of an ordinary person, it was impossible for him to cover all aspects when faced with such an enormous flood of information. Right now, he could only abandon the vast majority of the information flow inside. He could only place the danger and stimulation range at the ability user level. At the same time, he set up a sentry post around his family members. This sort of defensive measure was enough to guard against enemies like Jin Tong and the Five Metal Hunting Group, who were accustomed to using extraordinary powers. However, He Yueyin also gave him a warning. As the information spread, the various powers of capital would come up with more tricks. Perhaps they were far from having the direct destructive power of Jin Tong, but from a practical perspective, the methods of capital were more varied, more secretive, and more impossible to guard against. Luo Nan deeply believed in this, but the more this was so, the more it was impossible for him to abandon the structure of the soul cloak. He had thought of many ideas. He had already applied to President Ouyang to increase the privileges of the computing space, transferring a portion of the pressure to the supercomputer resources of the branch. However, this sort of method required a layer of transformation. It was only suitable for analysis and prediction. It was impossible to react in time when serious unexpected situations truly occurred. Only Luo Nan himself truly understood the pressure he bore from last night until now. Other people were like Qin Ikuan, completely unaware of it, or they saw it as a matter of course. Her Majesty Empress Wu was a bit like this. It was rare for Wan Ta to be able to see his abilities and understand his difficulties. Luo Nan couldn't help but speak a few words to relieve the pressure. The results were pretty good. The previous wave of drowsiness had passed. Chatting with Wan Ta probably caused him to be distracted, allowing his suppressed cerebral cortex to get some rest. Nothing unexpected happened during this time. Did I use too much strength? Luo Nan was reflecting on himself. The problem was that even though he knew the flaws of this method, he had no other choice in order to ensure that nothing went wrong. Luo Nan sighed from the bottom of his heart and smiled at Wan Ta. Dean, you said that you would teach me the art of creation. Of course, he didn't want to learn it right now. He just wanted to start a new topic. However, Wan Ta's answer was unexpected. Right now, what you need isn't the art of creation. Wan Ta was silent for a full 5 seconds when he spoke to this point. Then he spoke softly. Are you interested in overall planning? Overall planning? Luo Nan subconsciously sat up straight. Though it wasn't a proper noun, its meaning was very clear when placed in the context of Wan Ta. This wasn't the first time he heard of it. Wan Ta was a bit surprised to see Luo Nan's reaction. You know about it? Oh, Junping told you about it? There's also Wei Wu. Whether it was Xie Junping or Di Wei Wu, both of them boasted about this ability to the point of being godly. Multitasking, all-seeing. It was as if learning this would allow one's IQ to easily break the charts. Speaking of which, if there was a drug that could increase one's IQ, no, it could increase one's information processing ability, placed before Luo Nan's eyes, he would definitely swallow it in one gulp no matter what side effects it had. Therefore, Luo Nan's heart palpitated with excitement even though Wan Ta was just talking about it. But soon, he straightened out his attitude. After all, Xie Junping had said that if he wanted to reach the level of overall planning, he would need to go through 5 or 6 stages and spend 3 to 5 years of time. Even if the method was impressive, The threshold of time was there. It was useless if he couldn't cross it. Luo Nan laughed. My math grades are only average. He still held the attitude of chatting and chatting, but Wan Ta appeared very serious. Though overall planning is essentially an algorithm, we don't need to use mathematical logic to explain it. If there is a certain language or code, then it should be a signal from the brain itself. Really? Luo Nan blinked his eyes. Wan Ta really did turn serious. He gazed at Luo Nan. For the vast majority of people, learning this kind of code is like having an unreal dream. Because our consciousness has no way of sensing brain activity, we can only use logic, including experiments on our own bodies, to verify it one by one. But you are different. At least I believe you are. Are you referring to introspection? Is this a prerequisite? Luo Nan guessed. Wan Ta shook his head. You need to have the precision to touch the nervous system. This requirement is a bit high. But Luo Nan was completely capable of this. As a psychic ability user who was proficient in internal refinement, introspection wasn't difficult for him. And his many years of experience in drug modification had given him an extremely high sensitivity towards his own nervous system. He also possessed the corresponding understanding. And at this time, Luo Nan finally discovered that Wan Ta was undoubtedly communicating with him. It could be said that he was teaching a few things. The tea on the short table to the side was already cold, but no one remembered to change it. Let alone Luo Nan. Even Qi Nikuan couldn't help but prick up his ears. He wanted to see what this so-called overall planning theory looked like. Only Rue Wen sat quietly on the sofa. She seemed to be listening, but she also seemed to be daydreaming. Her aura was faint, making people unconsciously ignore her existence. Wan Ta spoke softly. Right now, there is no harm in verifying it. You are also a professional researcher of the nervous system. The algorithm I proposed is based on a few basic facts. Please pay attention to whether or not it goes against your common sense. First, the brain possesses an extremely complex parallel structure. But most of the time, when a person perceives a meaningful and complete piece of information, it is established on top of a sequence of time. It will certainly display a sequential order. The meaning of these words was that the brain could only handle one meaningful task at a time. It could also be said that the same task often required the brain to utilize multiple functional areas in cooperation to complete it. This was something that had been proven by relevant research for many years. It was also a point that people criticized the human brain as an inferior biological computer. Luo Nan was able to see this from his biology textbook, so he immediately expressed his approval without hesitation. But then he thought of something else in the blink of an eye. Since this was the case, what was the meaning of multitasking? There was clearly a contradiction. Wan Ta didn't verify it a step further. He continued, second, depolarization will occur when a nerve cell is activated. During this time, the nerve cell will no longer receive new information. In other words, there is a gap between activation and inhibition. Yes, this is common sense. Dean Wan Ta sped up his speech. Third, the brain's reaction time is different for each level of input information. But in the end, there will certainly be an algorithm that encompasses everything, translating it into human language and habits of thought. Fourth, the integration and calculation process of external information mostly occurs in the deep waters that humans are unable to perceive. This is the direction and result of the evolution of the human brain. Luo Nan only thought for a moment before admitting that there was nothing wrong with this. This was all basic knowledge in the relevant field. Even if there were some disputes, it was still feasible to talk about it. Wan Ta smiled. You see, there is a division of labor, a gap, a difference, a direction, and a result. In this way, as long as one has the means of transformation, one can target one's own perception and thought, and follow a certain rhythm and a certain order to carry out dispatching, making it more efficient. This is all possible. Luo Nan slowly nodded his head, agreeing with this logic. Wan Ta summarized, on this basis, the meaning of overall coordination is to adjust the reception and reaction rate of each level of information during the time that humans can form effective responses. This is to reduce mutual interference as much as possible, yet it is necessary to integrate efficiently. Finally, it is unified at the highest level of thought. Luo Nan pondered seriously for a moment. He scratched his head and said, I roughly understand. Dean, what you mean is to grasp the rhythm of activation and inhibition of the nerve cell, to increase the level of information, to receive more information in the same amount of time. Oh, if the frequency of integration is increased, some perceptible thought processes may evolve into instincts. But this is a complete transformation of the brain's mental functions. Even if the large structure remains the same, how can the synaptic connections be added or deleted be in the billions? Even if the nervous system is extremely malleable, how can we grasp this direction and scale? Chapter 5:20. 4:10 in the afternoon. In a small room on the 7th floor of the Shangding building, Luo Nan sat on a recliner, slowly flipping through the information on the flexible screen in a leisurely manner. However, a sharp needle tube was connected to his wrist. It was through this channel that the relevant drug components entered his blood vessels in an unending stream. They passed through the blood circulation, broke through the blood-brain barrier, and acted upon the cerebral cortex. This component had no other effects. It just made Luo Nan's nerve cells more sensitive, helping these thoroughly tempered nerve structures to better absorb other drugs. Otherwise, even if Luo Nan was injected with a stimulant drug that exceeded the lethal dose of an ordinary person by 10 times, he would not be affected. This time, the infusion would last for nearly 6 hours. Only then could Luo Nan absorb the relevant stimulant drug for the next 2 to 3 days. This would guarantee his ability to maintain a conscious state. You're losing for 6 hours now, but you'll lose for 6 days later. The price is far too great. Speaking of which, President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu are looking after you. What are you worried about? It's useless to be worried. I'm taking the risk of becoming a drug dealer to help you. Don't you feel embarrassed if you don't give me a few molecular formulas? Brother Octopus, who had taken a temporary leave of absence from the laboratory, stood to the side. He seriously evaluated the dosage of the drug and the changes in Luo Nan's body. He couldn't help but shift his gaze as he mumbled to himself. He secretly sized up the seemingly well-behaved and quiet Miss 2000th. He couldn't help but mutter to himself. She's not some outstanding beauty. Is there a need to go through so much trouble? Could geniuses really be omnipotent? Could they see what this little girl would look like after she matured? If Luo Nan harbored such thoughts, then damn. A minimum of 3 years. Hold on. It seemed that Luo Nan was still in the so-called juvenile criminal protection period? The tricks of geniuses were too deep. Forgive Brother Octopus for learning from Luo Nan recently. He did more experiments on himself, and his train of thought became more and more bizarre. Then he saw Luo Nan open the working area of the drawing software and casually draw on it. It looked like he was drawing a half-sphere, layer after layer, nested layer after layer. It was like a simple and primitive nesting doll game. Qin Yikuan walked in at this time. He hesitated for a moment when he saw this scene, but he couldn't hold back. He said to Luo Nan, "Should we give Dean Wan's explanation to President Ouyang and Old You to study it? After all, it involves the modification of the nervous system and the risk is relatively high. I don't think President Wan has any intention of keeping it a secret." Qin Yikuan's words were not biased. When Wan Ta mentioned the overall plan in front of him, he did not intend to hide anything. But from another perspective, there were only a few people in Xia City who could put Wan Ta's theory into practice in a short period of time. As a bodyguard, Qin Yikuan was used to thinking of the worst possible situation. Let's not talk about what Wan Ta's intentions were. Just consider the objective situation. Putting this theory into practice in the nervous system might lead to damage to Luo Nan or even the other people's nervous systems. This would result in injuries. Considering the current complex situation in Xia City, it was not impossible for someone to come and destroy them. Luo Nan grunted. "I've already sent a copy to President Ouyang. He said that it's very interesting. I can give it a try first. After some time, when he's done with his work, he'll personally verify it before communicating with Dean Wan." Qin Yikuan was speechless. Wasn't this what he was most worried about? At a time like this, Vice President, he was indeed more trustworthy. It didn't matter that they were talking here, but Brother Octopus's curiosity was piqued. Hey, isn't there someone else here? What are you guys talking about? The research of the nervous system is also my field. Tell you, and then add one more victim to the list of possible victims? Qin Yikuan just gave him a sideways glance when Luo Nan tapped the flexible screen interface. There's no harm in telling you. I just learned an applied theory from a very powerful fellow. That Dean Wan? That's right. Dean Wan calls it the overall plan. Luo Nan gave a general introduction. Brother Octopus's eyes lit up when he heard this. His main research direction was neurochemistry. The core theory isn't that amazing, but the application method is far too rare. If it really is useful, then wouldn't the calculation and judgment abilities of all ability users in the future be raised to a whole new level? Yeah. That's why I want to give it a try. This isn't something that can be done in a day or two. Oh, if it's you, then it really might be possible. Qin Ikuan wanted to strangle Octopus's neck right now, but Luo Nan's words caused his vision to darken. I'm already trying. Right now, I'm mainly performing decomposition and reconstruction on the perceptual plane. Octopus didn't look at the apparatus anymore. He came over and asked, how is it? There are a few overlapping areas, for example, the hippocampus. More attention needs to be paid to discrimination and layering. The response of the peripheral nerves is a bit larger. It's probably because the auditory and tactile senses share more brain regions. It also involves a portion of the spinal cord's functions. Only now did Qin Ikuan discover that Luo Nan's fingers were twitching a bit unconsciously. Looking closely, even his feet were the same. Luo Nan smiled when he noticed Qin Ikuan's gaze. He didn't mind at all. These are all controllable. Because everyone's situation is different, some adjustments need to be made to the details. Okay. As he spoke, the corresponding trembling slowed down and even disappeared. Octopus was excited. Wait a moment. Wait a moment. Let me connect the brainwave analyzer. Do I need an MRI or something? Luo Nan shook his head. Not for now. I've recorded all the relevant data through the hexa ear. But it's hard to say if it's universal or not. There's no other way. Geniuses are always different from mortals. What are you planning to do next? Let's do mental sensing. This isn't going through the functional organs, but it's an input of stimulation to the functional brain regions. Right now, my senses are mainly visual, but there's also a portion of primitive senses, like dangerous stimuli. There's also a higher level part, like the sensing of soul strength fluctuations. His words were quite abstract, but the actual difficulty was 100 times, 1,000 times higher. For a normal person, just the mechanism of vision alone involved over 30 functional brain regions. Hearing, touch, smell, and taste were a bit simpler, but most of them had over 10. These regions were distributed in various parts of the brain. They each formed an image and interconnected with each other to form a marvelous topological diagram. If he really had to ponder over how to reorganize and reconstruct these regions, it would be like controlling several dozen or 100 fierce horses at the same time. Not only would he have to divert them to different levels and directions, he would also have to avoid them clashing with each other and pulling him back. Just thinking about it was enough to make a person collapse. Thanks to Wanta, what he provided wasn't a simple theory. Instead, it was a complete system that could be followed and compared. It was the same as taking out a clear engineering blueprint. As long as one had basic professional knowledge, it was fine to follow it. Even if one didn't know the reason for it in a short time, it was fine to imitate it. And it was because of this that Qin Ikuan's worries were normal in a certain sense. Luo Nan's method was both complicated and dangerous. Wanta also said that normal cultivation shouldn't be like this. Xie Junping and the others had smoother methods to help them carry out the gradual division, reorganization, and other processes in order to suit the normal development and metabolic rhythm of the brain. Luo Nan directly set out to transform and straighten. It was no different from a complex brain surgery that didn't require a craniotomy. The risk factor soared. But it wasn't to the extent of being radical. In fact, Luo Nan's nervous system had undergone at least 2 large-scale transformations. The first time was also the most fundamental. It was when he was between the ages of 10 to 15. He followed his grandfather's notes and carried out experiments on the basic container of formatting theory. This process of drug transformation spanned 5 years. It used an extremely dangerous and extremely cruel method to completely transform Luo Nan's nervous system and physiological foundation. It opened up a heavenly ladder from the material plane to the mental world. It was during this process of transformation that Luo Nan's neural network, which covered his entire body, possessed a high degree of plasticity. The second transformation was when Luo Nan learned from Gym Master Xiao. He came into contact with the internal training method and carried out the cultivation of the 9 orifices and 6 roots technique on this foundation. Of course, there was also a main axis of coupling. This included the actual combat strengthening of his Sanzhou training. This transformation was very short compared to the 5-year process of drug transformation. But it systematically fed back the accumulation of Luo Nan's mental domain to his fleshly body. While strengthening his body, it formed the most revered basic modes of the external 3 harmonies and the internal 3 harmonies in traditional martial arts theory. This allowed Luo Nan to make accurate and efficient responses to external stimuli. It could be said that the growth and development of Luo Nan's neural network and its further expansion and shaping were all on a relatively correct and extremely high path. This foundation was something that Xie Junping, Du Yong, and the other beginner cultivators were unable to reach. Even the vast majority of ability users who had already entered the sect and possessed certain accomplishments were unable to reach. Luo Nan's nervous system was the most complete and perfect building material for plasticity. The corresponding optimization and transformation of the nervous system was just like building blocks. Changing parts of the structural relationships could be reversed at any time. In other words, all he needed to do was erase the newly added synaptic connections and extinguish the corresponding neuronal activation resonance frequency. There was no need to doubt that Luo Nan had this ability. Therefore, when he understood the theoretical foundation of overall planning, all he needed to do was to take the good habits and patterns he had formed in the past. He needed to carry out a simple combing according to the requirements of this theory. He needed to reduce the mutual interference and interference between brain regions to the lowest level. Then he sealed them layer by layer and placed them into the most suitable level and position. He sank them into the deepest depths of the iceberg of the subconscious. Only then did he carry out a higher-level secondary coding. He transformed the reasoning that originally required the participation of subjective consciousness into a kind of intuition and instantaneous judgment. The workload of the brain didn't actually decrease during this process, but it was able to form the most competitive supply chain. It crushed the primitive, unconscious, and inefficient modes of thought. Octopus appeared to be a mad scientist, but he was actually quite cautious in nature. Seeing that Luo Nan hadn't spoken for some time, he became a bit nervous. "How do you feel right now? How are you compared to before?" Luo Nan shook his head slightly. "I can't tell for now. After all, I've learned the 9 orifices 6 roots technique from Gym Master Xiao. I've already reached the pinnacle of perceiving order. It'll be hard for me to make any clear breakthroughs in a short period of time. And I need to redo logic programming for deeper calculations. I want Brother Bamboo Pole to help me do some calculations and verification. At the very least, I need to understand the internal logic within." Octopus gave him a thumbs up. "You have a clear train of thought." Luo Nan sighed. "It's not my train of thought. Truth be told, everything else about Dean Wan is good. It's just that the materialism of cultivation is really awkward. If I don't change it a bit, my brain will be in a mess." Chapter 521. The core of Vanta's theory was based on materialism. From his perspective, even if it was a spiritual ability user's out-of-body phenomenon, it was still nothing more than a projection of the human body's energy structure in the material world. As for the current state of the spiritual plane, it could be explained by the theory of the higher dimensional world. Regardless of who was right and who was wrong, Luo Nan's brain would be screwed if he accepted the complex theories of 2 systems at the same time. Luo Nan could only make adjustments according to his own actual circumstances. Octopus expressed his support. "Just ask Bamboo Pole for help. This guy has a deep understanding of neural network algorithms. I usually ask him for help when I'm making models. Of course, Mr. Luo, please don't forget about me. When I write my thesis, I don't have time to write a thesis. I have. I mean after the transfer is over, I'll definitely have time. Otherwise, what are the 8 tentacles of an octopus for? Well, let's not talk about being the corresponding author or the first author. I'd even accept the title of the second author." Luo Nan chuckled twice and his mind relaxed quite a bit. Octopus continued to ponder over the overall planning theory and clicked his tongue. "This Dean Wan is also an interesting person. It's obviously his special skill, but he said he would teach it all at once?" "I didn't." Qin Ikuan witnessed Wan Ta teaching such a profound and complicated technique with his own eyes. The pressure was immense and he felt as if his brain was half disabled. Since he had listened from the beginning to the end, he knew the difference. That person only told me the result directly, saying that it was enough for Mr. Luo to know this. He only mentioned a few words about the complicated ritual to advance from the basic level to the advanced level. That is something unique to their sect. Octopus instantly understood. I've given you the blueprint and asked you to reverse it. Actually, it's more or less the same. I think there's a big difference. No difference, no difference. As long as you have the answer, you can try a few more times. Chi Nikuan couldn't help but want to sigh. Someone quickly come and control this bunch of Frankenstein monsters who didn't take their lives seriously. Before he could finish sighing, the door to the room opened and someone else walked in. The room, which was not very spacious to begin with, became even more cramped with 5 people and equipment. When Chi Nikuan and Brother Octopus saw him, they both greeted him, Vice President. Luonan frowned. Sister Yuan, are you okay? He Yuan, who came in, was dressed simply and neatly. However, on her right cheek, there was a twisted scar caused by lightning. It was the mark left behind when she fought with Jean Tong in the morning. Who knew how long it would take for it to recover to its original state? He Yuan didn't care too much about her appearance. She only nodded. I'm fine. Her gaze swept over Rui Wen, who was sitting quietly. She immediately switched to the main topic. The list of all ability users who have entered or are planning to enter Xia City has been updated. The number of C-class and above personnel had already exceeded 200, and they would arrive in the next 1 to 2 days. According to the estimates of the intelligence company, there are at least twice as many people who are still observing the situation. Luo Nan blinked his eyes, allowing his thoughts to enter the real world from laboratory mode. It's a bit less than I imagined. Luo Nan subconsciously erased the hemispherical structure on the flexible screen as he spoke. His brush fell straight to the ground, dividing the work into 2 parts. In his opinion, this represented the classification of the enemies he was currently facing. He wrote 200 on the left side, circled it, and drew a cross in passing. This action was nothing in the eyes of others, but Chi Nikuan, Luo Nan's personal bodyguard, had a belly full of subtle information from the conversation between Luo Nan and Dean Wan Ta. He was at a sensitive time, and his eyelids twitched when he saw this. Luo Nan muttered to himself, these are the guys who are tempted and have a lot of motivation. They are driven by their desires. They come as they please. The most typical example is Jean Tong. Are there many extraordinaries like Jean Tong? He Yuan said calmly. There are quite a few. But after this morning's battle, President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu will form a certain deterrent force. Those people will be more cautious and observe before confirming the news of Jean Tong's death. In addition, President Ouyang is urging headquarters to pass a resolution opposing Jean Tong's actions of attacking a member of the society. He also requests the relevant parties of the inner world to boycott the rewards, missions, and so on related to the so-called 2000th. Octopus couldn't help but interject, how could headquarters let the agreement pass? But they can make their respective standpoints clear. Let everyone stand on the front stage. Is it convenient to take precautions? Want to start a war? He Yuan didn't respond this time. Luo Nan casually moved his pen and scribbled on the other side of the blank space. There's also a part of them. They are the major powers and capitals. In other words, they are orders and financial groups. They also have desires, but they are a bit more abstract. They are considerations of benefits. For the time being, I believe that they will be a bit more rational. At the very least, they will make some risk assessments. There was a hidden meaning in his words. It was true that this part of the threat was more rational, but their infiltration into modern society was pervasive. There were many people who were completely unaware of the 16 billion and the 2000th. They would be driven by these powers and cause trouble for Luo Nan. Even if the news of Jean Tong's death was announced to the public right now, it would at most restrain the first group of stragglers who were driven by desires. As for the large-scale powers, they were large in size and had high sights. They considered the profits of a few years or a few decades later. The death of 1 or 2 extraordinaries did not hurt them at all. Perhaps from their perspective, it would be best for the society's internal members and even the entire inner world to beat the brains out of these people. This would be the most beneficial for them in the long run. The various secret orders basically act according to the rules of the inner world. And a portion of the officials don't wish for too many elements of the inner world to be mixed into their projects. From the looks of things, the majority of the powers of the secret orders are still watching from the sidelines. He Yuan analyzed softly. She reminded Luo Nan once more, it's just that threats don't have much effect when it comes to capital. Especially when they see the huge profits. Capital has its own will, but in most cases, it doesn't move according to the will of an individual. Octopus was a bit more acerbic. In comparison, politicians are more principled than them. Of course, most of the time, there are illicit relationships on both sides, vile spawns. Luo Nan looked at the drawing interface. His gaze was fixed on it, but his thoughts were drifting far away. Even so, we can't do nothing before we find a more effective method. From his perspective, it was impossible to chop off the brains of capital. However, if he were to destroy the tools and other means of production of capital, the situation might have changed by then. In other words, he had to take the initiative to change the current situation. He had to break this damned balance. And he had to tilt it in a direction that was advantageous to him. This required a more accurate, more powerful attack. Luo Nan was preparing for this. Brother Octopus reminded them at this time, I'm starting to add ingredients. Why don't you guys slow down and keep quiet? He Yuan heard this and said, I won't disturb you guys anymore. You guys can continue. She gave a slight greeting to everyone in the room as she spoke, pushed open the door and left. Ha! Ha! Qin Yikuan's mind was a bit stupefied. He remembered that he had already reported the relevant situation. With He Yuan's rational personality, she should have at least given a few words of advice regarding Luo Nan's actions, right? But what was happening right now? Oh, there was quite a bit of tacit understanding between them. Qin Yikuan furrowed his brows in contemplation. His heart grew more and more apprehensive. Luo Nan closed his eyes on the recliner. He experienced the familiar yet unfamiliar feeling of the stimulant drug composition seeping into his neurons. It was familiar because this situation had been repeated several thousand times over the past 5 years. It was unfamiliar because his foundational vessel had successfully advanced into the "my heart's a prison" format. This was the first time he had truly received the stimulant effects of such a taboo drug. After several months of cultivation, his grasp of his body and mind was far from what it was 2 months ago. It was just as Dean Wan had said. The self-awareness of an ordinary person was actually excluded from the foundational operation of the brain. But at this time, Luo Nan could truly feel the precise yet rough, strict, and random natural operation pattern of his brain. This was a warm, moist, marvelous domain that could create miracles at any time. Yet it was overgrown with weeds. Luo Nan hadn't actually changed too much with the entry of the logic of overall planning. However, his understanding of this domain was completely different now that he looked within himself. It was like learning ancient literature. He looked at the densely packed uncommon characters, the polysemous characters, the phonetic characters, and the awkward syntax. It was hard to think of the image, hard to decipher the meaning. Everything was chaotic and chaotic when he skimmed over it. But when you really compare the exegesis and annotations, successfully read and memorized it, you could at least have an idea of the structure, the grammar, and the derivation of the branches and tendrils of the text. Overall planning was a work of exegesis on the logic of the brain's functional functions. Even if it was just the words of one school, the meaning was clear and unobstructed. Just by looking at the method, Luo Nan naturally knew where the most important and crucial parts of the text were. There were also some unfinished meanings within that needed to be studied diligently in the future to seek a deeper understanding. This kind of directional pointer was truly rare and exquisite. Luo Nan carried out deductions according to the theory of overall planning. He sorted out the difficulties within one by one, preparing to clarify and express it to Bamboo Pole in order to form a complete model. Of course, he could also seek guidance from President Ouyang and Wan Ta. Luo Nan engraved these sluggish nodes in his mind. The number gradually increased, and it was hard for Luo Nan to avoid further pondering and pondering. He sought to make the connections within smooth and clear. At the same time, his cerebral cortex was exceptionally active due to the stimulant drug composition. Some fantastic ideas, whether they were illusions or inspirations, were actually random splicing and combinations of relevant information. They were mapped onto the plane of his consciousness, changing in a myriad of colors. But Luo Nan knew that this state was a precursor to losing control of his mind. He immediately prepared to collect his mind and suppress it. But Luo Nan never truly calmed his mind. These chaotic thoughts were naturally divided, categorized, eliminated, and cancelled. A considerable portion of the meaningless deformations were eliminated. The elementary logical model of thought of overall planning seemed to have unwittingly formed an embryonic form. Before he could finish his thought, a ray of light suddenly leaped in his mind. It was not a flash of inspiration, but lightning. Lightning suddenly radiated in all directions from the depths of his brain. It wandered and weaved in and out. In that instant, it was as if a layer of stricter outer membrane had been plated over this region that had just seen the law for the first time. Chapter 522. Electricity flickered and instantly filled his brain. Such a scene stirred Luo Nan's mind. He wanted to defend, but he didn't know where to start. His body went stiff by instinct. He only let out a sigh of relief when he discovered that the electricity did not penetrate the material plane. But a problem followed. The external neuron. What the hell was going on? Hey, don't let your imagination run wild. Don't scare people. Brother Octopus slapped Luo Nan on the shoulder. Luo Nan's brainwaves fluctuated violently from 2 seconds ago. It nearly made Brother Octopus believe that the drug ingredients had accidentally injured some of his nerves. He broke into a cold sweat on the spot. Luo Nan composed himself and raised his hand in apology. I'm sorry. It might be a stress reaction. Let me adjust a bit. Actually, Luo Nan didn't even know what he said. Right now his brain was filled with the external neuron, but he was completely clueless. How could he calm down for a time? Are you sure you're fine? Octopus was skeptical. He moved closer to the integrated interface of the device and looked at a few key pieces of data. He carefully considered the next dose. No. Hiss. I'm really fine. Luo Nan suddenly shivered. He shifted his gaze following this feeling and saw Rui Wen staring at him. Her pupils were deep. It was impossible to tell whether it was curiosity, concern, or pure observation. Though the abnormal activity of the external neuron did not affect Luo Nan's brain tissues, it seemed to have caused some effects within Luo Nan's sealed system. Rui Wen was temporarily residing within the sealed system. Naturally, she could sense it. And since it existed in the form of the condensation ring, it was the core link of the entire soul cloak. The corresponding fluctuations swept past all of Luo Nan's current monitoring regions. Fortunately, the electricity of the external neuron was withdrawn as soon as it was released. It swept past the depths of Luo Nan's polar domain. Even though there were some slight vibrations and effects, they were transmitted through the layers of mental curtains. By the time it permeated into Luo Nan's polar domain, it was already weak to the point where it was hard for Luo Nan to detect it. It didn't cause any effects to the outside world. Ever since he took the external neuron out of the flexible screen and allowed it to see the light of day once more, it had never been this agitated aside from the early, active charging phase. What was the reason for this? Luo Nan's eyebrows jumped. He really wanted to immediately pull that thing out and size it up before his eyes. But he also knew that he was in front of people, and he was in the middle of injecting the drug. Both inside and outside were under the monitoring of the device. It wasn't a good time to investigate in detail. After thinking about it for a while, he forced his eyes shut. However, the drowsiness had long been crushed by the medicine. Under his slightly trembling eyelids, it was even more difficult for him to calm down. Left with no other choice, he could only silently recite the 16 words of "My Heart's a Prison," and combine it with the internal training technique taught by Gym Master Xiao to forcefully calm his emotions and enter a meditative state. The cultivation during this period of time was still useful. About a minute later, he gradually calmed down and entered a semi-meditative state. The external neuron didn't go haywire again. Just like most of the time, it fell into a long period of standby. Time passed quickly. When Luo Nan opened his eyes again, he was woken up by Octopus's slap. In reality, Octopus's palm was still 10 centimeters away from his shoulder when Luo Nan raised his eyes. This gave Octopus a fright. How did you sleep? I didn't sleep. Luo Nan spoke the truth. He was in a semi-meditative state, but his perception of the outside world remained sharp. He stared extremely closely at the vast surroundings that were covered by the soul cloak. Instead, he ignored the area around his body, whether intentionally or unintentionally. He indirectly ignored the meaning of himself. It was as if he was dreaming a wanton flowing dream. This was a small technique he had learned without a teacher from the theory of overall planning. It allowed a portion of the cerebral cortex to obtain rest. Under the general background of the strong stimulation of the entire cerebral cortex by the medicine, this sort of rest was even more rare and precious. Luo Nan couldn't care less about this small improvement right now. He waited for the infusion time to end, and several monitoring instruments left his body. He immediately focused his mind into the depths of his brain and locked onto the external neuron. However, 3 hours passed, and the brilliant light that flickered on the plane of nothingness didn't show any visible changes. It still existed in the state of the condensation ring. It hung in the void of his brain where the material plane and the mental plane intersected. Luo Nan pondered for a moment, and he suddenly came to a realization. He subconsciously tightened his grip on the loose-leaf notebook in his hand. His consciousness wasn't idle either. He brought up the system interface corresponding to the external neuron. Then he saw the gray icon of the visualization diagram on the main interface, which had been stagnant for 2 months. There was a slight change in brightness now. When Luo Nan's consciousness concentrated, the icon's download progress had already silently risen by a chunk. It went from a seemingly unchanging 99% to 5%. Should he express his happiness? Actually, this wasn't the most eye-catching change on the interface. What was truly eye-catching was that a new icon had appeared on the side of the gray visualization diagram. It was a complete structure made up of complex yet clear lines. It was a simplified diagram of the outline of the human brain. The entire diagram appeared to be in a transparent state, with only clear and distinct lines filling in the gaps of the inner region of the diagram. A few specks of star-like burning points dotted the gaps. There were also lines connecting them. At first glance, it looked very much like an ancient constellation diagram. It also looked a bit like the life sketches that Luo Nan's consciousness described. The most important thing was that this virtual brain icon was colored. The bright white lines displayed information that was completely different from the gray icon next to it. This app was already in the download complete state. It could be opened at any time. Octopus waved his hand in front of Luo Nan's eyes. "You're fine, right? Get up and walk a few steps?" Luo Nan shook his head. He didn't say anything and closed his eyes again. He didn't care about anything else. He just poured his thoughts into the virtual brain icon. The interface opened in an instant. In an instant, the scene of deep space filled his senses. Since it was on the mental plane, the feeling was more intense than any special effects blockbuster. It had already reached or even surpassed the effects of virtual reality. Luo Nan felt as if he had instantly fallen into the empty outer space. The specks of starlight dotted the extreme distance, further fueling his feeling of nothingness and weightlessness. This feeling wasn't bad, but the warning pop-up window hurt the atmosphere. Especially in a situation where he couldn't understand it at all. A translucent panel suddenly appeared in front of him. Complex yet orderly words appeared on the panel. It was called words because it clearly had the special structural rules of hieroglyphics. Moreover, the rules were strict. It clearly possessed some sort of writing standard. But Luo Nan didn't recognize a single word of the rules, and the standards. At best, he had a few guesses about some of the structures. He was a bit familiar. For example, the only options on the panel were probably confirm, agree, or continue, and the like. Luo Nan stared blankly at this panel for a few seconds. Countless seemingly reasonable yet absurd thoughts flashed through his mind. His thoughts subconsciously touched it again, and the panel immediately disappeared. His point of view also changed. A virtual brain icon similar to the app icon appeared in the starry sky. Under the contrast of the scenery in outer space, the virtual brain's first impression was that it was a half-transparent planet. The star map that included it had become much more complicated, too. There seemed to be some indescribable mysteries hidden in it. This virtual brain planet rotated noiselessly in deep space. As it rotated, Luo Nan saw a satellite orbiting it. It wasn't a satellite. At least it didn't look like one. It should be a spaceship in outer space. Its volume was about 1/10 the size of the virtual brain. Its overall lines appeared very slender and graceful. It had a pleasing design. It was like a high-level spaceship that could roam in outer space. Luo Nan wasn't a military enthusiast, But he knew that only the Earth's aerospace forces could equip a spaceship like this. Only super-rich people who liked to roam in outer space would purchase one. Why did this toy suddenly appear? It couldn't be a spaceship design game, right? Another orbiting satellite appeared before he could finish his thought. Luo Nan looked at the pitch-black exoskeleton armor and turned around. Let's not talk about its design. Just by looking at its volume, it was only slightly smaller than a spaceship in the entire interface. It felt supermassive. It gave off an awkward feeling of discordant proportions. Only now did he suddenly realize something. Don't say that it was discordant. In the end, this was just an app. It was some sort of UI interface. Perhaps this app was similar to the observation platform on Gear's side. It was also a control center. Logically speaking, it controlled two resources. One was the exoskeleton, and the other was the spaceship in outer space. What the hell? Luo Nan had never seen this sort of exoskeleton armor before. He had never seen this sort of spaceship either. There was absolutely no such thing in his surroundings. He probingly touched it with his telepathic thoughts. A clear feeling of sluggishness was fed back, allowing Luo Nan to probe a step further. The two satellites were both in an unreadable state. All right, this was quite reasonable. Luo Nan turned his telepathic thoughts to the central virtual brain planet. This time there was a response. Another translucent pop-up window popped out. It was still a paragraph of unintelligible text. But this time, two options appeared below the text. The form was quite clear. One was the selected state. The other was the unselected state. Luo Nan had often seen these sorts of options using normal logic. There was a high probability of one being yes, and one being no. The question was, what was it? What was it that was no? Though the interface gave him options, Luo Nan didn't have much leeway to choose. At best he could flip a coin. Oh, he could also decide whether to choose now or to choose later. Luo Nan chose the latter. After all, now wasn't the best time to delve deeper. He had been in a daze for far too long. Octopus already wanted to put a new device on him. I'm fine. If you're fine, then why are you fainting? Who's fainting? Doesn't internal vision take time? A machine might crash when it does a self-examination, let alone the nervous system. Luo Nan stood up and moved his waist and legs a bit. He didn't see any changes, except for the brand-new human-computer interface that had already been engraved into his brain. Qin Yikuan raised his hand to indicate to him at this time. On his hand was the wristband that Luo Nan had taken off before injecting the drug. This toy buzzed and vibrated. The collar displayed was none other than Moya. Chapter 523. The jeep slid down the street without a sound. It made a slight turn and entered a temporary parking space on the side of the street. It just so happened to exhaust its kinetic energy and stop. The lights inside the jeep lit up, illuminating the 5 people packed to the brim. Aside from the fixed group of Luo Nan, Rue Wan, Qin Yikuan, and Gao De, there was another person in the front passenger seat. This person was also a familiar face. Cat Eyes. She had temporarily joined the security team at Luo Nan's request. Nominally, it was to make it easier to look after Rue Wan. In reality, it really was like this. It was just that there was a hidden condition, to better conceal some of Rue Wan's peculiarities, especially during the time when Luo Nan and she were temporarily separated. Of course, Cat Eyes' own investigative abilities were well known in the Xia City branch. She absolutely had the qualifications to join the security team. Qin Yikuan and Gao De had no objections. Mr. Luo, don't worry. We will look after Rue Wan well. Qin Yikuan displayed his usual sense of responsibility. Cat Eyes, who was truly in charge of this matter, curled her lips. Okay. Luo Nan thought of the scene of Rue Wan killing Jin Tong in one strike when he said these words. Frankly speaking, it was quite difficult to look after a girl who could flash several hundred kilometers away at any time. Luo Nan revealed a smiling face to the girl beside him. Rue Wan? Rue Wan, who was sitting upright by the window, withdrew her gaze that was cast deep into the night sky. She looked back, her gaze clear, quiet, and silent. It had already been 24 hours since last night, and she had spoken no more than 5 sentences. She felt that she was even more reticent than she was in the underground fighting arena. Luonan didn't mind. He spoke in a low voice. We need to separate for a while. If you need anything, you can tell me at any time. You have the wristband and the hexa ear. My contact information is on them. If you really can't do it, you can come personally. See that road outside? Follow it straight ahead. My house is around 400 meters away. As long as Rue 1 had a clear location, she could come to his house as a guest in the blink of an eye. However, Qin Ikuan didn't have a perceptual understanding of Rue 1's abilities. He just thought that Luonan was worried that Rue 1 wasn't used to being alone. He said, "Our surveillance point is nearby. It's an independent apartment. The environment is pretty good." Cat Eyes had been called to work overtime at the last minute. She still had a belly full of resentment right now. She couldn't help but mock and ridicule in her words. "I see that Rue 1 is quite easy." Luonan glared at her, but in the end he didn't retort. Luonan closed the car door with a slight bang and walked into the community. Just as he said to Rue 1, he would reach home in a few hundred meters. In the past, it was a place to rest and relax. In order to maintain this most precious function in the future, he now had to face challenges. Luonan exercised his facial muscles a bit and permeated his soul strength into the hexa ear. He opened a document within the cloud storage space. This was the magic weapon that Luonan used to fool his family. He discovered that Moya had already sensed some inklings in the afternoon, so he specifically asked Yuan to help him make it. Officer He's move was indeed extraordinary. There were approximately a dozen or so pages of relevant documents. Four plans were listed for Luonan to choose from. Each plan was detailed and thorough. Even the steps and the corresponding explanations were listed. It was precisely because of this proposal document that Luonan's wishful thinking stopped. Otherwise, he really would have dared to directly bring Rue 1 back home. No matter how the situation developed, perhaps there would be no leeway to turn things around. Luonan had already read through the proposal in detail many times. He had made a preliminary choice. However, Yuan bluntly stated at the beginning of the proposal, "No proposal is perfect. If you want to convince and hide it from these two elders who already have their own views, then it will be a test of your ability to adapt to the situation." The problem was that adaptability had never been Luonan's strong suit. Luonan sighed. He confirmed that the document in the cloud was kept open from beginning to end. He thought for a bit and opened a group chat window. He chose to share the view and typed a line of words inside. "If there's any unexpected situation, you guys help me handle it." Cat Eyes was the first to reply. "It's rare to have such self-awareness. Things need to be done in the front. Otherwise, people will have to clean up after you." "Then what are you cleaning up in the front?" The veteran train driver's bamboo pole spirit appeared in a flash. He pulled out a string of 666,666. It could be said that practically everyone in this friend group exploded. Relax, relax. Take deep breaths. Clench your teeth. Shrink your anus and lift your hips. After a long string of messages, someone finally broke the group. "Don't forget to start with 3 years, Cat Eyes." Luonan walked into the courtyard of his home under the noisy background of the friend group. The AI housekeeper detected his existence through a sensor and timely said, "Luonan, after 38 hours, welcome home." Luonan's eyelids twitched. They just changed it. Who used this setting? Ding dong. Our philanthropist is back. Moya greeted him from the living room as Luonan entered the house to change his shoes. The outside of the house was freezing cold, but the inside of the house was as warm as spring. Moya dressed very casually at home. She wore a loose striped casual outfit, and then she played with the style of not wearing anything underneath. Her snow-white long legs were practically completely exposed. She lay on the sofa with her long legs resting on the armrest of the sofa. She even used a knife to cut apples and sent them piece by piece into her mouth. She looked quite carefree. "Oh, the welfare. Boss Luo, I remember that your sister is still single right now. Do you mind if I join the group of pursuers?" A notification popped up in the group. Bamboo pole has been muted by Administrator Luonan for 1 minute. Luonan's gaze turned to the bottom of the sofa after completing the operation. He looked at Mo Pang, who had a bitter expression on his face as he supported himself with a tablet. It was clear that this little fatty had no choice but to succumb to his sister's tyrannical power. He was almost at his limit right now. Not only was he drenched in sweat, but his butt was almost over the sofa. Then Moya kicked him down without a trace of politeness. Oh my God. Keep going. You dare to sell my private photos. Why don't you go to heaven? Mo Peng lay on the carpet like a pig looking for death. He wouldn't budge no matter what. He even bickered with his sister. That's not selling. That's just gifting. Then there's reciprocation. This is how friendships develop. Luo Nan, you be the judge. I've already stressed it 100 times. That's a girl, a girl, a girl. Moya still won't let it go. Speaking of which, what are you afraid of? Ha 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 ha, this little fatty is quite cute. Ying, do you want him? Bamboo pole was muted by Administrator Zhang Ying for 10 minutes. Luo Nan's nerves had been stretched taut like a bow, but now he had to loosen up. Plus, he didn't have to face his aunt and uncle right away. This made him feel a bit relaxed. Luo Nan sat on the sofa and let out a breath. He asked despite knowing the answer. Where's Aunt and the others? Moya finished eating the apple and threw the core into the trash can. She played with the fruit knife in her hand. She responded lazily. They're in the study upstairs. They're having a board of directors meeting right now. They'll have a staff meeting after they've decided on a plan. Mo Peng secretly crawled a bit further away. He pulled some distance from Moya and used Luo Nan as a shield. Only then did he struggle to get up. He panted as he leaned against Luo Nan's side and asked, I say, I heard that your love exploded. In order to take care of a street kid, you accompanied him to the orphanage for an entire night? Yeah. I never saw it before. Speaking of which, is it a boy or a girl? You don't have any ideas, right? Yeah, we want to know too. A group of friends randomly entered the group. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. Fortunately, he didn't need to exhaust his brain power for this sort of senseless matter. He knew that the two elders had already come downstairs after hearing the AI housekeeper's report. His aunt's voice came from the staircase in the next moment. How come you're back so late? It was the same sort of concern that seemed normal, but Luo Nan raised his spirits. He told his first lie of the night in earnest. I finished helping that child with the procedures, and then I invited a few helper friends to a meal. The two elders walked into the living room as they spoke and sat on the sofa. The semicircular sofa layout just happened to accommodate a family of 5. The atmosphere of a family meeting was immediately present. As the head of the family, Mo Haihang gave Luo Nan a few words of advice. The state of emergency hasn't been lifted yet. Don't take it lightly. This sort of vicious incident where over 100 people died in a single night is rarely seen in the entire world, let alone Xia City. If I didn't hear from Moya that your friends are professional security circles, your aunt would have gone outside to bring you back. Luo Nan responded obediently and took the opportunity to explain a few words, laying the groundwork. After I learned martial arts from Gym Master Xiao, I entered that circle. Many of my peers are in the security industry. Their personalities aren't bad. Moya occupied the sofa all by herself. She felt quite uncomfortable. Luo Shuqing glared at her, but Moya pretended not to see it. She spoke lazily. You've entered the circle. Let's not talk about other things, but you've done things more efficiently. You've learned the skill of acting first and reporting later. Aren't you going to explain it to everyone? You're talking about Rui Wen? Luo Nan lied with his eyes wide open. I'm just helping her with the procedures and giving her a legal identity. What do you mean acting first and reporting later? Of course, it would be better if I could help her to the end. Moya laughed. How do you want to help her? That kid is really pitiful, but there are millions and millions of vagrants in the world. Are you going to help all of them? Moya was doubtful from beginning to end, but she was actually paving the way for Luo Nan with every word. She saved Luo Nan the unnecessary explanation, and made it easier for Luo Nan to get straight to the point. Luo Nan licked his lips. He secretly thanked Moya and took this opportunity. Rui Wen isn't a vagrant. His words set the tone. Luo Nan stood up and walked over to Mrs. Luo Shuqing's side with the loose-leaf notebook. He flipped to the flexible screen page and lit up the interface. He turned on the player and spoke in a low voice. Please take a look at this. Luo Shuqing and her husband locked gazes and took the notebook. An image had already appeared on the screen at this time. There was also noise in the background. This was the result of Luo Nan deliberately turning the volume to the maximum. The image was shaky at first. It wasn't clear, but there was a sharp DJ-like voice that suddenly rose up. Look! This kid is as thin as a hemp stick. She's the most hateful lucky person in the fighting arena. She's the plunderer who harvests gambling money. Rue Wen. The sound of cursing mixed in the background. It was the wanton venting of hundreds and thousands of spectators. They had all lost large amounts of wealth in the previous matches. They hated that damned skinny kid who didn't die to the bone. She lived through 3 life and death battles. She made countless people suffer, and she helped those lucky bastards. But today, she's going to face Ares, who has already won 97 matches. Our undefeated war god. There's no doubt that this is a deliberately arranged revenge. It's destined to be a bloody slaughter. Let's cheer, let's celebrate, and embrace the archetype of death. Luo Nan's voice cut in faintly amidst the tsunami-like cheers. This is the brother who has always been protecting her. Chapter 524. Mo Peng was the first to run over, attracted by the sound. Mo Ya, who was lying on the sofa, perked up her ears. She was especially surprised that Luo Nan would actually take out this sort of thing, especially when the vulgar language erupted from the video. She blinked her eyes, got down on her bare feet, moved to her mother's side, and stuck her head out to watch. F***K me. Mo Peng cried out involuntarily at this very moment. His body unconsciously leaned back, because he saw the scene of Rue when being kicked off the stage by her older brother, Ares, in the fighting arena. But soon, he couldn't even make a sound. He was stupefied on the spot amidst the sounds of bones being deliberately collected and the cheers of a tsunami. Luo Nan knew that this was the scene of Jack ruthlessly strangling Ares. The underground fighting arena under the control of Jack's gang did not allow things like mercy to appear. What awaited those contestants was certain death the moment they were discovered. Rue 1 was actually going to be eliminated back then. She was only able to live to this day because she was an experimental subject for a related plan, and enjoyed the privilege of being exempted from death. There was no need to mention these things again. Just the scene played on the flexible screen was already enough. The video Luo Nan took out was the video he found after the Xia City branch eliminated Jack and dealt with the information related to Jack's gang. He Yuan pulled them out and had an expert editor carry out the selection and splicing. It was used as a stepping stone for tonight's show. Straightforward and cruel, but it had the power to shake the hearts of people. The video purposefully selected the scenes of Rue Wen's early life and death battles. It avoided the scenes of her neatly killing her opponent later on. It successfully created the image of a weak, pitiful, yet tenacious and unyielding lone chick. Mo Peng was the first to fall into the trap. His facial features unconsciously wrinkled together and his eyes squinted. He couldn't stand the blood, but he couldn't shift his gaze away. He grimaced as he watched. Especially when he saw Rue when struggling to get up after being knocked to the ground again and again, while the audience below the stage cheered crazily and cruelly. He just felt that the bottom line of humanity had been completely broken through. This is too **king excessive. No one responded to him. Instead, Emoya used her keen ears to discern even more information from the clamorous cheers. For example, the flat-chested witch and the like. A woman? Emoya revealed a rare expression of shock and a bit of embarrassment. She's a woman? Luo Nan was a bit surprised. You don't know? Well, this was the fault of preconceived notions. Last night, in the dimly lit alley, Rue Wen had short hair and thin clothes. She was thin and flat, without any feminine characteristics or temperament. Emoya's first impression of her was that she was a little boy. After that, at the Santa Maria Charity Hall, Emoya left early. At the administrative center, she arrived late and did not see the specific information collected, so she misunderstood along the way. This misunderstanding shouldn't have happened, but when it happened to Emoya, the effect was surprisingly good. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was already unable to endure the scene in the video. She lightly pinched her forehead to buffer it for a bit. She heard the conversation between Emoya and Luo Nan and couldn't help but shudder. A girl? How old are you? I'm really not too clear. After all, I'm an orphan. Luo Nan spoke the truth. The Xia City branch didn't find any original records of Rue Wen's time in the laboratory, But from what they could tell from her initial data in the underground fighting arena, she was as thin and weak as a 6 or 7-year-old child when she first arrived. It was only because of 3 years of continuous training and the effects of drugs that she grew into her current appearance. It was also because of this abnormal growth that her age became hard to decipher. Initial estimates indicated that she was very likely 13 or 14 years old. But looking at it from an extreme perspective, there was also a chance that she was 8 or 9 years old. Luo Nen didn't speak on this topic. He just said, "I've heard that the reason for her current situation is due to her underdevelopment. There's also the damage caused by the drug ingredients. But the doctor says that if she keeps up with nutrition, she can still develop a second time." The more he said this, the more sympathy he aroused. Xiaofan had hired an expert editor with a high salary. It was really worth the money. Not only did his work clearly describe Rui Wen's experience, it also incorporated the extremely insulting remarks of the unscrupulous audience and the cruel words of life and death at every turn. Luo Shuqing was already angry when faced with these scenes. These lawless thugs. Are they in Xia City? Heh, the police and of course the SCA aren't doing anything good to allow this place to continue to operate. The innocent uncle didn't refute, but his gaze turned away from the video. He seemed to be deep in thought. Luo Nen saw that the time was about right. He gently took the notebook back from his aunt to avoid excessively agitating his family. But there were some words that needed to be said. Right now this underground fighting arena has already been destroyed. But there's a bit of a problem with the measures taken to deal with the aftermath. So much so that a child like Rui Wen has to wander the streets. I feel that since I've run into her, I should help her out. With the video as a basis, whatever Luo Nen said right now had a sort of natural justice to it. Mo Peng had already subconsciously nodded his head. Fine, this person's opinion could be ignored. Luo Nen shot a glance at Mo Ya. With his understanding of Mo Ya and Xiaofan and the analysis of the others, this older sister of his should have already given these two elders a heads up, correcting their mental expectations. Sure enough, Uncle expressed very calmly. You're right. It's fine if you don't know. But since you've run into it, you can't ignore it. But doing charity isn't a simple task. How do you want to do it? They're on the right track. Luo Nan took a deep breath and followed the instructions on the document. He organized his words a bit and spoke softly. I've discussed this child with Brother Qin and a few other friends. Recently, the Department of Civil Affairs has organized a Family Recognition Society activity for a few welfare homes that adopt vagrant orphans in the West. The main goal is to form a pair of helpers, to help the orphans come into contact with normal families and society. We feel that this activity is pretty good, so we're mainly going through the procedures today. We're going to transfer Rui Wen's relationship to the Orchid Town Welfare Home in the Forest Wall District. We know the director of this welfare home. He's a pretty good person, and he's a big-shot designer. Family Recognition Society. Emoya had already finished searching on her wristband. She shot a glance at Luo Nan before speaking. It's already been going on for quite a few years. It seems like the government is backing it up? Yes, we've also considered this. And there's also Worker Zhai. He just so happens to be in Orchid Town and he's adopted a child. I've seen him before. Mrs. Luo Shuqing had a pensive look. Worker Zhai, is he the one who helped you with your physics lessons? I remember that he works at the Crossover Electronic City, right? Yes, he's also an off-campus tutor for our school's Precision Electronics Interest Society. Here, this is a photo of them. Luo Nan used the virtual screen of his wristband to show his family. He had asked Di Wei Wu to send this photo over. They were inside the welfare home. The two had natural expressions, and the environment was set up appropriately. It even gave off a bit of an artistic feeling. This activity is pretty good. Mrs. Luo Shuqing thought for a moment. It seems like the old Su couple from the company participated. They even posted it on their friends' circle 2 months ago. Luo Nan didn't respond. He just secretly clenched his fists. This was a good start. And the friends group also sent a wave of applauding emojis. The logic is clear. The expressions are on point. Old Zhai made a guest appearance in the background. I can take a screenshot for him. They've prepared quite amply. It looks like we don't need to get involved. The facts have proven that a certain someone has a talent for lying. Luo Nan recalled his previous speech. He felt that his performance was stable, and he felt a bit proud. He Yuan's plan borrowed the name of the Family Recognition Society, and it was his own suggestion. He had obtained inspiration from the relationship between worker Zhai and Di Weiwu. It looked like there was a layer separating it from direct adoption, and it was more troublesome. But after the relationship was confirmed, there was a buffer period of observation. It gave both sides a period of adaptation, and there was also the support of society. It was convenient to make a two-way choice, and it should be easier for the elders to accept it psychologically. Moreover, with Rue Wen's current situation, living at home for a long time would undoubtedly bring disaster to the family. This was the most realistic consideration. Nan Nan has thought things through very thoroughly. Luo Shuqing praised him sincerely. Being able to say this proved that she didn't reject this plan. Mo Haiheng followed up with his evaluation. What's even more rare is that you're able to walk the path. You're not just going through the motions. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. He hurriedly spoke the truth. A friend helped me with the details. He said that it's better this way. Mo Haiheng and Luo Shuqing locked gazes and said, "This child's life is pitiful. Anyone who encounters her will want to extend a helping hand. We'll definitely help if we can. Since you've already walked the path, we'll make contact with the welfare home tomorrow and understand the situation. I still need to discuss the specifics with your aunt. It's getting late. You've been running around outside all day. Go to sleep first." "Ha! That's it?" Luo Nan was startled. Bamboo Pole reacted the fastest in the group. "I'm afraid it's not that simple. The adoption is a small matter. Right now, the focus is on you." Papercut agreed. "Yeah. Maybe they don't want other children to know sensitive information. I think the test will come later." Luo Nan nodded imperceptibly and looked at Mo Ya. This older sister of his simply stretched her waist. She strode her long legs and went upstairs. "Then you guys discuss it. I still have work tomorrow. I'm going to sleep first. If I have time later, I'll go take a look at the welfare home. Lon Town, right? Send me the address later." Mo Peng moved closer to the side. He wanted to say something, but his mother glared at him. "Go to sleep, everyone. Don't you have school tomorrow?" "That's hard to say. If the emergency situation continues, then maybe classes will be suspended? Let's go back to the house." Mo Peng shrugged his shoulders and pulled Luo Nan upstairs with him. At the same time he spoke in a low voice. "I support you. Beautifully done." Luo Nan smiled at him. If his family had voted for him, then he would have already won by now. Of course, this wasn't the truth, but it more or less explained a kind of momentum. The two went upstairs and returned to their respective rooms. Luo Nan changed into home clothes, but he didn't wash up. This was because he knew that tonight's test had yet to end. Chapter 525. The first emotion that emerged in Luo Nan's heart when faced with his uncle's doubt was not nervousness. Instead, he let out a secret sigh of relief. It's finally here. Actually, this was much better than the worst-case scenario shown in the plan. Only one uncle and aunt came, and it was the wise and rational uncle. It was clear that they wanted to have a heart-to-heart chat, not a three-way joint hearing. This was already the most ideal situation. The more it was like this, the more he couldn't screw things up. The group of friends entered a state of silence at this time. Everyone had a tacit understanding to let Luo Nan calm his mind. Luo Nan carefully compared the plan in the document. He first silently apologized to his uncle. To the outside world, it was a relatively long period of silence. Then he spoke. It was an accident. Mo Haiheng was unable to be satisfied with this answer. He frowned slightly. Accident? When did the accident happen? September 30th. Which one? The night of September 30th, the Mid-Autumn Festival. We went to see Grandpa that day. You guys said that he could be at any time. Mo Haiheng recalled seriously for a moment. His brows locked even tighter. Our entire family was together that day, aside from Mo Ya. From morning till night. But I was unconscious for a period of time. That night, after I met Yan Yonghua. It was at that time that I went to the fighting arena. Mo Haiheng opened his mouth when he heard Yan Yonghua's name. In the end, He forcefully swallowed the words nonsense back down. His rational side prevailed, and the bizarre logic that had been circling in his mind naturally pushed out the answer. Out-of-body state? A group of people exploded in the group of friends. Damn, he really is knowledgeable. It's normal for a high-level SCA technician to know a few things. The key is how to deal with it. Looking at this guy's expression, he must have guessed something beforehand, right? Speaking of which, is he about to confess? I want to see the document written by Secretary He. Luo Nen continued to calm his breathing amidst the chaotic messages in the group. He did his best to look at his uncle with a calm gaze. That's right. His uncle had a basic concept of this sort of thing. Since this was the case, he could save some words. From now on, the element of lies began to permeate. It had officially entered an irreversible domain. I was a soul-bound at the time. My consciousness was entrusted too. The sound of flapping wings could be heard clearly in the pitter-patter of rain outside the window. Luo Nen made a gesture, and the automatic curtains slowly opened. An enormous bird could be seen extending its claws to hook onto the windowsill. Under the illumination of the light in the room, its pitch-black feathers seemed to completely melt into the darkness of the night. It's called ink. It was originally a very common bald crow. But I would use it to conduct some experiments, so now I've become a little different from a normal crow. That night, after my ability sprouted, part of my consciousness was placed on ink. I wanted to track down Yen Yonghua and find out more about that guy, but I ran into something along the way. I met a friend and took a wrong turn, entering the recycling stratum of the River Wu district. There we discovered that underground combat arena and met Rue 1. Luo Nen spoke to this point in a single breath. His heartbeat had already sped up unconsciously. Right now, he really couldn't go back. Mo Haihang was obviously stunned. He looked at Luo Nan, then he stared at ink outside the window. This happened a few times, but he actually didn't pursue the matter. He just said softly, "Then, are you an ability user now? Did you join?" Luo Nan nodded and finished speaking in a single breath. "Yes. After I sent my soul to ink, I helped my friend destroy that underground combat arena. And that friend was a member of the Xia City branch. Also, there were members of the branch in the hospital where I stayed that day. Over and over again, they recruited me into the society. Last week, I officially awakened. My abilities are soul attachment and precise perception." "You've awakened?" Mo Haihang subconsciously confirmed once more. His absent-minded state was quite obvious. Luo Nan just went, "Yep." Red Fox, who had been rather quiet all this time, suddenly roasted in his friend group, "Official awakening. This is the most disgusting joke I've ever heard." Zhang Yingying also chimed in. "Sure enough, secretaries are all black-hearted and black-handed. This document is quite lacking in sincerity." For this group of people to speak like this, it proved that the current situation hadn't gone astray. Sure enough, Luo Nan's uncle had done some mental preparation. He accepted Luo Nan's words in a dazed but smooth state. Several seconds later he asked, "What happened to you? How did you feel at the Xia City branch?" Luo Nan didn't know what his uncle had left unsaid. He could only respond step by step. "The people there are quite nice. Everyone treats me quite well." Mo Haihang thought of another young man who was quite close to Luo Nan. "Shuele. Is he also a member of the branch?" "Yeah. But he joined the society later than me. I was the one who recruited him into the society. Gym Master Xiao approved of it." "Really? If that's the case, then of course it's great." Mo Haihang suddenly laughed. He had many more questions that he wanted to ask in depth. But he, who had rich experience in society, knew very well that it was impossible to interrogate Luo Nan about all of Luo Nan's ins and outs with just a few words. It wasn't just Luo Nan. The Ability User Society probably wouldn't allow it either. He could only continue to ask in a chatty manner, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. "You've been in the society for over 2 months now. How have you been doing during this time? What kind of work has the society arranged for you normally?" "I don't have any clear duties right now. After all, I just joined the society not too long ago. My initiation training has just ended." The group of friends hissed. A certain person didn't have any clear duties, but the society didn't need to specifically arrange for him to find work for others from time to time. Even Mo Haiheng didn't quite believe it. After all, Luo Nan had experienced quite a few things over the past 2 months. He could recall it with a single thought. What happened at Frost River Reality? That was the Order of Justice going crazy. I just happened to be there at the right time. Plus, President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu have already suppressed the matter. Luo Nan knew that it wasn't easy to win people's trust with these words. He thought for a bit and faced the uniformly raised middle finger from his group of friends. He spoke without thinking. I was just unlucky that time. So far, the real work that the society has arranged for me is last month. I cooperated with a subordinate studio of the society to do some investigative work. It mainly involved the infiltration of mutants into Xia City. Infiltration of mutants? Cough. Right now, my work is already done. Actually, it's very simple. I just need to divert some of my energy to ink. Then I'll let it do its work. Bamboo Pole finally had the chance to remind Luo Nan. Stop. Stop. That's about it. Talking too much might make things worse. Luo Nan stopped in time. Mo Haiheng, who was at the center of the authority department, automatically filled in the details. If it's the infiltration of mutants. Is it the one that Trigate Security filed a case last month? Luo Nan felt it was a bit strange. They filed a case? But there's been no news from the government. This involves far too much sensitive information. Revealing it to the public will only cause chaos. Speaking up to this point, Mo Haiheng had already formed a closed loop with Luo Nan's confession. The specific time, location, reason, and development were all present. Now, even concrete examples were listed out. Just the logical chain alone already had a relatively trustworthy skeleton. All that was left was the various details. But what was the point of mulling over these things? And so, Mo Haiheng asked a few more questions about the changes in Luo Nan's daily life. Then, he stopped this round of heart-to-heart conversation. What do you want to do now? Let's continue like this for now. It's not bad. Luo Nan spoke vaguely and looked over impatiently. Should I tell Aunt about these things? Mo Haiheng was a bit startled. Then he laughed bitterly. Let me think about it. You two, father and son, seem like you were born to give me problems. Luo Nan was startled by the sudden mention of that person. Then he saw Mo Haiheng get up to leave. That's it. Just a few superficial questions like dragonflies skimming the surface of the water were enough to get through? Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. He stood up instinctively. Uncle. Mo Haiheng really did walk out. He only turned around and warned Luo Nan when he opened the door. The Ability User Society is a large vat of dye. Their reputation in Xia City is pretty good. But you need to pay attention. Don't stray from the path. Luo Nan could only nod in agreement. He watched Mo Haiheng walk out and close the door. But then he sensed that Mo Haiheng didn't return to his room. Instead, he went to the study. There, he pondered in a daze. In the group chat, Papercut was baffled. That's it? That can't be right. Bamboo Pole expressed. How could it be that easy to fool them? Since they're people from the SCA, a series of confirmations will certainly be unavoidable in the next few days. But it's most convenient for a secretary to clean up their mess. We don't need to worry about it. Then let's disperse. Disperse. Thank you, everyone. Luo Nan expressed his thanks in the group chat. Then he closed the shared perspective. He lay on his bed, closed his eyes, and recalled his previous words to see if there were any slip-ups. Nearly 90% of Luo Nan's words were true. It was just that he had been sloppy in certain key aspects of nature, confusing up a few timelines. Though Mo Haiheng grasped far more information resources than ordinary people, he wasn't a member of the inner world. It was like learning a foreign language for the first time. He could understand the meaning, but the color of emotion, the degree of seriousness, and so on were hard to grasp. This gave Luo Nan the opportunity to speak vaguely. Truly. I brought this upon myself. Not even half an hour had passed since he returned home, but Luo Nan was physically and mentally exhausted. He wasn't this tired even when he ambushed and killed Jin Tong. Luo Nan was at a loss for a long time whether or not he should tell part of the truth to his elders. But He Yueyin told him, Let's not talk about Uncle Mo Haihong's work resources in the SCA. Just consider the careers of Luo Nan's grandfather, father, and mother in the wilderness back in the day, as well as related sensitive matters. This determined the essential difference between his family's elders and those ignorant ordinary people. It was impossible to hide it. It was just a matter of how to express it. Actually, according to He Yuan's intentions, it was better to make a decision when it was necessary. Since things had already reached this stage, it was better to tell them everything and then immediately take measures to firmly protect his family. Of course, this was a fortress of safety established at the cost of completely destroying the normal lives of Luo Nan's family. And even He Yuan found it hard to guarantee that their family would truly be worry-free from then on. Chapter 526. A few days after injecting the drug, Luo Nan had already said goodbye to sleep. He had a sleepless night, and the only person in the family who could sleep at night without any worries was probably that kid, Mo Peng. However, the morning of the second day felt just like last night's conversation. It passed by like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Before this, Luo Nan had even run out to do his morning exercises according to his living habits. He had been separated from Rue 1 for an entire night in passing. When he returned home with a body full of sweat, he simply thought that time had turned back to several days ago. Luo Nan had a general idea of the reason. His uncle had pondered for over an hour in the study last night, and the information he told his aunt went through a layer of filtering. His uncle didn't conceal the matter of Luo Nan joining the Xia City branch. It was just that from his mouth the Xia City branch had become a social society, something similar to a brotherhood. Through this analogy, the inner world, which was extremely complex, had become a relatively closed social circle. The corresponding activities were explained as research into superpowers. Could this sort of explanation be described as the older the ginger, the spicier? Luo Nan sat in front of the dining table, chewing on a piece of beef in his mouth, but it was tasteless. He felt that it was a bit absurd. The enormous flow of information had been passed around like this, layer by layer, and finally turned into a completely warped answer. Every time the flow was intercepted, the corresponding pressure had to be shouldered by the interceptor. Luo Nan was aware of this, his uncle was aware of this, but would his aunt really believe it? There was also Moya. It must be said that Moya was the one who understood Luo Nan's ins and outs the most out of everyone in the family. She should be the one with the greatest doubts. But ever since they formed a bit of tacit understanding in the administrative center, it seemed that she really wasn't interested at all. How was that possible? Luo Nan stuffed the food into his stomach with great difficulty, but he didn't want to stay at home for long. He hurriedly washed his face and rinsed his mouth before saying, "I'm going to school." "I'm going too." In the end, Mo Peng didn't get to wait for the suspension notice. His spirit, energy, and soul were completely dispirited. He could only wave his hand weakly and follow Luo Nan outside. The two had just reached the entrance when Luo Shuqing suddenly spoke from behind. "It's getting late. I'll send you off." "There's no need. It's just a matter of 2 steps." "Forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Mo Peng rolled his eyes and left without looking back. The fact that his own son couldn't compare to his nephew was a sad thing that he had already realized long ago when he was wearing diapers. But Luo Nan cried bitterly in his mind. He could feel his uncle and Moya's gazes cast over at him at this time. Not being able to travel with Rue 1, Qin Ikuan, and the others was a small matter. What was important was how to deal with his aunt. He couldn't reject her. He might have been able to in the past, but he definitely couldn't during this sensitive period. He could only turn around and obediently reply, "Oh, thank you, Auntie." Luo Nan responded excessively courteously. Luo Nan immediately opened up his friend group of staff officers. He used his telepathic thoughts to guide and leave a message asking for help, emergency. Perhaps it was because the atmosphere from last night had not dissipated, and it was just in time for dinner. The group was very lively. Zhang Yingying exclaimed, "Is your house in hell mode? You've passed one level after another. In this kind of environment, you should be thankful that you haven't been raised into a weakling." Cat Eyes of the security team flew over and said, "I think he's quite popular." Bamboo Pole followed closely behind. "You've tried it? Hey, why is there another person in the group?" Crow. This is great. We have a fox, a crow, an octopus, and a cat. It's enough to make a fairy tale. Octopus sent a yawning emoji. Newcomer, hurry up and send me a red packet to refresh yourself. Alright, who's Crow? Huh, newcomer? Isn't this Boss Luo's friend group? Boss Luo. Give me an introduction. The answer in Luo Nan's mind had just become clear when Crag burst probingly asked, Rue when? Ha! Cat Eyes sent a photo of her and Rue Wan at this time. The two's faces were pressed together. One was smiling brilliantly, while the other was looking at the camera with indifference and indifference. Under the illumination of the lights in the room, one was charming and tender, while the other had a personality. I'm a bit free tonight, so I pulled the little girl up. Look, she'll be really pretty if she tidies up her hair. Cool androgynous styles are the most popular right now. I'll take Rue One to go shopping when I have nothing else to do. Ying, do you want to go? Welcome newcomer. I want to go. I want to go. Zhang Ying sprinkled flowers and applauded, bringing forth a wave. The atmosphere was very enthusiastic. Perhaps it was because of Cat Eye's urging, but Rue Wan actually used the name Crow to send an emoji. It was the first emoji in the emoji pack, smile. Compared to the indifference in the photo, there was an even greater contrast in cuteness. Bamboo Pole, this nouveau riche who often fished for extra money, immediately sprinkled a rain of money. The more beautiful women the better. The deeper the relationship, the better. Crow, I can't ask you out. Octopus was shocked. At least 3 years, hey. Cat Eyes gave him a middle finger. If you can live for 3 seconds, I'll give it to you. In reality, what Cat Eyes said was 100% the truth. But the problem was that they had gone off topic, okay? Luo Nan didn't have time to complain. He had already followed his aunt out and into the car. They entered an independent, sealed space. He saw that the other person didn't have any intention of taking the initiative to speak. He felt that it would be more refreshing to take the initiative to speak. Aunt, yesterday, Uncle brought it up with you? Mrs. Luo Shuqing started the car and set it to autopilot. She responded indifferently. Our days can still go on. Clearly, Luo Nan's pronunciation was unclear. He had mixed up the words brought up and left. However, his aunt's nitpicking was just an excuse. There would certainly be an even more amazing one in the back. Luo Nan just felt his hair stand on end. The group gradually calmed down from its previous clamor. Through Luo Nan's shared perspective, everyone's attention was focused. But a call came in at this time, and it was a direct request for a video call. Luo Nan swept a glance. It was Di Wei Wu. He raised his head, and Luo Shuqing indicated that it was fine for him to just do his own thing. The video call connected, and nothing else could be seen. All he saw was the child's face that was a bit distorted from excitement. Then there was a piercing scream. Brother Nan! Brother Nan! Brother Nan! You're 2F** King Awesome. Ha! He succeeded. Godfather succeeded. Look at this. Look at this. The little fellow gently pinched a floating water droplet over, as if he was presenting a treasure. He crushed it with force and even crushed it a few times. But when his fingers left the water droplet for a second or two, the water droplet condensed once more. It grew from small to large, and it was on the verge of falling. While Di Wei Wu was reporting the good news, Papercut, who had been invisible all this time, set off fireworks in his friend group. He even learned from the tycoon bamboo pole and sprinkled a rain of red packets of money. He succeeded. He wasted 5 years and succeeded in a single day. Boss Luo is a genius. Not many people knew about Worker Zhai's matter. Most of the people in the group were stupefied. What's going on? Luo Nan didn't pay attention to how Papercut would explain this to the others. He was happy for Worker Zhai. Worker Zhai's face just so happened to appear on the virtual screen at this time. This man was over 40 years old, and his eyes seemed to be slightly red. He was clearly emotional. But even so, he was still more perceptive than Di Wei Wu. He knew that this wasn't the time to chat when he saw Luo Nan's background. He grinned and said, Wei Wu, sorry to disturb you. I'll just say one more word. It's done. Plus, I've successfully activated the 3rd level of the Hexa ear. I've crossed 2 checkpoints in 1 step. We'll talk about the specifics later. The first 3 of the 6 communication levels of the hexaear were the radio, the television, and the computer. The first 2 levels passively received information, but the third level evolved to the human-computer interaction stage. According to the standards of Xia City, Worker Zhai was a qualified awakened. In other words, not only did Worker Zhai successfully create a semi-permanent condensation ring, but he also borrowed this miraculous structure to increase the level of his soul strength and cross the checkpoint of awakening. For an ability user, this was absolutely a major event that would allow a carp to leap through the Dragon's Gate. Even though Luo Nan was currently plagued with troubles, he was still happy for Worker Zhai from the bottom of his heart. This is a great thing. Congratulations! Worker Zhai did his best to maintain a smile and a steady voice, but in the end, he just hoarsely said, "Thank you, Nanster." The call ended, but the clamor in the group of friends continued. According to what the group of people said, ability users like Worker Zhai, who had been stuck at the checkpoint of awakening for many years, would have their chances of awakening gradually decrease as they grew older. This was a huge problem that caused the non-awakened, who made up 90% of the group, to feel anxious and even despair. The success this time had evidence to observe. There were rules to follow. Writing a major thesis based on this was the bare minimum. It was even possible to establish a project. Luo Nan couldn't care less about the significance of this matter no matter how much the group raised it. He looked at his aunt in the first instance, thinking about how to combine his uncle's words and come up with a proper explanation. But Mrs. Luo Shuqing had a very calm appearance. "Is it Worker Zhai?" "Yeah." Today's matter, cough. It's a difficult problem that has troubled him for a long time. I had a flash of inspiration and came up with an idea. Then he experimented for a while and succeeded. That's why he came looking for me to report the good news. Luo Shuqing laughed but didn't say anything. She shifted her gaze forward, looking at the high-speed magnetic track that continued to extend out. This was bad. Mrs. Luo Shuqing was a senior HR employee who didn't show her emotions on her face in society. Every year, who knew how many elites brimming with confidence would sigh in the face of the past she guarded. But she was still very straightforward in front of her family. She said one thing as one and two things as two. Once she was silent, it meant that she had something very heavy on her mind. This wouldn't do. Luo Nan's head hurt. No matter how hard he steeled his resolve to kill and intimidate, it was to the outside world. The change in the atmosphere of a family couldn't be stopped by the destruction of the human body. He tried to communicate. "Aunt." Before he could finish speaking, he saw Mrs. Luo Shuqing's elbows press forward. Her body leaned forward, and her chin pressed against the back of her hand. Her entire body just lay on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead at the road. At this moment, she was no longer a solemn elder, nor was she a dignified executive. Instead, it was as if she had returned to 20 years ago, the age of youth. Chapter 527. Luo Shuqing's expression of indescribable emotions caused the atmosphere in the car to become increasingly strange. Luo Nan didn't dare to disturb her, but his keen senses discovered that the moisture on his aunt's cheeks had increased a bit. Was she crying? The car drove on the low-altitude traffic zone. The morning traffic surged and shuttled back and forth. No one paid attention to the feeling of being in this ordinary family car. Luo Nan instinctively wanted to seek help from the staff officer team, but he saw his aunt's figure lying on the steering wheel. Her emotions were so desolate and low. Was this something that an outsider staff officer could solve? He instinctively felt that something was wrong. His friends noticed the situation in the car at this time and the clamor died down. But strangely, no one gave him any ideas. The silence on both sides made Luo Nan suddenly realize something. Yes. How could an outsider deal with a family's emotional problems? He subconsciously cut off the shared view and closed the group chat. But this didn't help his ability to solve problems. His mind was still a field of blankness. His aunt suddenly called out his name at this time. Her pronunciation carried a bit of a nasal sound. "Your birthday is coming soon, right?" "Ami? It's June." "I'm talking about your father." Luo Nan was suddenly stupefied on the spot. His aunt knew of his serious dissatisfaction with that person these past few years. She rarely took the initiative to mention it, so Luo Nan had already lost the relevant reaction. Should he be angry? Should he be furious? There was an instant when Luo Nan's heart was blocked by some sort of negative emotions. But the amount that truly surged to his head was much smaller than he imagined. Luo Nan had a general idea of what was going on. He discovered that the deeper he cultivated, the more frequently he could see traces of that fellow. Even if he missed and admired his mother's achievements, it was impossible to overlook the faintly discernible shadow under the brilliant radiance. Plus, there was still the external neuron. Luo Nan suddenly discovered that a considerable portion of the negative emotions that soared in his mind were directed at him. He felt like a child. His heart was clearly filled with resentment. He felt that all of his righteousness and grievances were occupied by an adult. But when an adult sent him a candy, he couldn't help but chew and eat it. There was even a hint of delight in his heart. Where's your backbone? Where's your righteousness? You were so angry for so long. Was it just a hypocritical gesture for a candy? Luo Nan used his fist to heavily pound his thigh, but he forgot that the strength of his hand was no longer the same as before. The sound of his fist wasn't loud, but he felt as if his bones had gone limp from the shock. Looking at him like this, Luo Shuqing actually laughed. Her voice was still nasal, but there was a kind of pleasure of revenge. She finally turned her head. The rims of her eyes were slightly red, but her smile was pure and distant. It was probably because of her gaze. She was clearly looking at Luo Nan, but it was as if she was looking at an old friend who had traveled far beyond the heavens. She didn't care what Luo Nan's mood was like. She minded her own business and continued to speak. It was probably this type of weather. Yes, it was snowing that day. The three of you have already returned to the city and are living in Blue Bay community. At that time, he was already in trouble. Luo Nan really wanted to loudly say, "Don't talk about that fellow's trivial matters." But there was an incorporeal power that sealed his mouth. He was actually able to analyze the components within. There was the guilt he felt towards his aunt, and there was also some sort of impulse from the bottom of his heart. Therefore, he only opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Only the occasional sound of a car horn could be heard within the soundproof interior of the car. Aside from this, there was only Luo Shuqing's flowing voice. He came to my house that day to discuss your grandfather's case. Then I sent him back. At that time, it really was a gloomy and miserable fog. We didn't talk. I just laid on the steering wheel. I don't even know what I was thinking. He was just like you. He sat in the front passenger seat. He was lost in thought until someone called him. It was a young man. Of course, he was much older than the child just now. His surname seemed to be Luo as well. I just remember that he had a sobbing tone as he shouted, "Success! Success! Luo Zhongheng! You deserter! You trash! You trash! You really are a fucking genius!" It was rare for Luo Shuqing to be able to imitate the details of that person's words to perfection. This included the curse words and the choking of his sobs. Luo Nan looked over stupidly. He looked at his aunt's eyes that were filled with a misty red glow. He looked at the corner of her lips that were slightly trembling, but she still revealed a smile. Your dad just smiled like that. I've completely forgotten what he said. But he just smiled. This is the first time I've seen him smile since he returned to the city. This is the first time. Tears finally overflowed. They overflowed her nose and dripped onto the steering wheel. Luo Shuqing didn't wipe them. She continued to lay on the steering wheel. She gazed at Luo Nan with the side of her face. She just extended her hand and lightly touched the back of her nephew's hand on his knee. What that person said was correct. What that child said just now was correct as well. You two, father and son, are both geniuses. One idea, one suggestion, one direction, and you can benefit others. You are undoubtedly geniuses. She didn't know how long it had been, but the smile never left the corner of her lips. She just expressed her emotions like this, without any concealment. I'm very happy. I'm very happy. Luo Shuqing didn't mention anything related to the society, ability users, or any other related matters during the entire journey. She only asked about worker Zhai. She asked about Di Wei Wu. She asked about Rue Wen. She only wanted to know about the geniuses related to Luo Nan. As for the others, she knew that it was meaningless. The car passed through 4 city districts and arrived at Acumen College. Luonan got off the car and sent off his aunt. He still stood motionless in his original spot. He just felt a bit absent-minded, a bit misty, and a bit complicated. However, a certain place in the depths of his heart gradually stabilized. It wasn't until the flow of people in the school gradually thickened and the gazes of many people gathered on his body did Luonan realize that he had been in a daze for far too long. Qin Ikuan and the others should have brought Ruiwen over by now. Luonan opened up his friend group once more, but he saw that this group of people had a tacit understanding. They no longer mentioned anything related to his family. Right now, the topic of their discussion revolved around Worker Zhai. They revolved around his breakthrough, the specific process and method of his successful awakening. Papercut was truly happy for Worker Zhai. He was crazily promoting the marvels of the condensation ring. Of course, this included Luonan's miraculous train of thought and pointers. Looking at Papercut's posture, it was as if he hated that he couldn't just say, Luonan shall rise as the descendant of a martial emperor. Luonan blushed a bit when he saw this, and the emotions in his heart faded a bit. He simply sent a blushing and embarrassed emoji. Papercut didn't care about Luonan's current mood. He just stuffed a large red packet over. Introducing you to old Zhai was the wisest decision I've made in all these years. I'll have him treat you later. Everyone, sit down and keep him company. Luonan subconsciously opened the red packet. He was shocked to see that there were actually 5 honor points inside. This wasn't something that could be converted with money. He was immediately shocked. This isn't appropriate. It's fine. I'm happy. Plus, exchanging 5 points for an awakening is too freaking profitable. Bamboo Pole sent 2 thumbs in praise. Brother Papercut is heroic. Boss Luo is a genius. One by one, the people below followed suit and lined up. Even Ruiwen was at the tail end of the line with a +8. It was unknown if she did it herself or if Cat Eyes helped her. Luonan simply asked from below, "Where are you now?" Parking lot. Exit A4. Shuelei, who had been accompanying Gym Master Mao Dong for the past 2 days, and who was also in charge of protection, exploded out at this time. Shuelei had a stupefied expression. What's going on? While Shuelei laboriously flipped through the historical information under everyone's reminder, Zhang Yingying said to Luonan, "Look over here. Look over here. Your chance to win a new nickname is here." Luonan replied with a head-scratching question mark. It was rare for Zhang Yingying to formally send a long paragraph of text. The boss is very interested in your and Worker Zhai's train of thought and method. He feels that this is a new direction in the application of the dripping sword. It will be helpful to those who have not awakened or have just awakened. It just so happens that the elementary training class is about to start. Luonan, hurry up and write the lesson plan. I'll let you go this year. Luonan only replied with an ellipsis. The others grew more and more excited. Congratulations! You can call him Teacher Luo in the future. Professor Luo is still more pretentious. The boss hasn't gone on stage yet. Do you want to practice in a small area first? We'll give you some face. Luonan sent a sweating emoji. No way. How many days has it been since I finished my basic training? Plus, it's just an idea. Worker Zhai is the one who came. Shouldn't Worker Zhai be the one to go? None of them can escape. Worker Zhai wants to participate in the exchange of experience. Hurry up and notify him. Papercut. No, just pull him into the group. It should be fine to use the hexa ear. Of course it's fine. I'll go pull him in. Papercut went to invite Worker Zhai into the group. Luonan's thoughts grew firmer. Having Worker Zhai is enough. Why would I join in the fun? You guys know that right now. I'm in a terrible mess. I can't split myself up. Yingying, can you help me explain this to Her Majesty Empress Wu? Oh, that's true. Zhang Yingying looked at the members list of the group. Crow had only spoken a few times. Zhang Yingying felt that it was a bit too much. Just thinking about the troubles that Luonan was currently encountering was enough to make them feel like their scalps were going to explode. Then I'll tell the boss? Tell him. Tell him. Thank you so much. Luonan managed to get out with great difficulty, and he saw Ruiwen and the others at the exit of the underground parking lot. Let's go to gear first. Ruiwen can stay there when I go to class in the future. Cat Eyes can accompany her. Well, if my family goes to the orphanage to check up on me, you know what to do. Ruiwen nodded slightly. Luo Nan had Ruiwen go to Gear for other reasons than for better arrangements. Before he could instruct Cat Eyes face to face, the Hexa ear rang with a sharp and ear-piercing alarm. An artificial voice also sounded at the same time. Number 5357, according to the adjusted calculations of the Branch Finance Committee, the system has already deducted all of your resource expenses from last week. You have a total of 137 honor points. Your current honor points are minus 124 points. Due to the negative value of your honor points, the system has automatically adjusted to credit mode and is preparing to shut down relevant privileges. If you have a different opinion, please file a written complaint with the Finance Committee as soon as possible. The countdown for shutting down relevant privileges has begun. It was at this moment that the countdown on the virtual vision of the Hexa ear began. He Yuan's conclusion was concise and clear, going straight to the heart of the matter. Her Majesty Empress Wu is the person in charge of the Finance Committee. All accounts have to go through her signature for confirmation. She has the authority to adjust the calculation of the relevant accounts, as well as to make evaluations regarding certain privileges. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. Yesterday he was helping to shelter her from the wind and rain. Why did he turn hostile today? Did you bump into her somewhere? How is that possible? I also... Hold on. Luo Nan suddenly thought of something. He raised his hand and sent a communication request to Zhang Yingying. Luo Nan didn't say much after the call connected. He directly sent over his bill and his opinion on how to deal with it. Do I count as having found the end? Zhang Yingying responded with a dumbfounded emoji, and then hurriedly replied, Wait a moment, let me ask. She then left this side and went to confirm with Her Majesty Empress Wu. However, once she left, there was no reply. Luo Nan was helpless. He could only first settle Ruiwen down. It was already time for class, so he hurried to the classroom. The first class today was a major class. Luo Nan and Xue Lei just so happened to be together. When the two met, they were both frowning a bit. There was no need to talk about Luo Nan. Right now he was in trouble from head to toe, from inside to out. He could become a corpse on the streets at any time, and he could become a bloodbath at any time. He was without a doubt the #1 troublesome source of infection in Xia City. From Xue Lei's perspective, today was already the 10th. There were only 12 days until the winter solstice battle with Duan Hong at the Thunder Falcon Dojo. He still hadn't found a perfect plan up until now, and he couldn't just stand by and watch Luo Nan's troubles with folded arms. His head was swollen to the point of pain. The two of them didn't listen to what the teacher said in class. Blessings never come in pairs, but misfortunes never come alone. For some reason, the teacher who was giving the major class actually played a question and answer game in this sort of class, and it hit Xue Lei in one hit. Even if Xue Lei had the courage of 1,000 men, he could only stand up stupidly and awkwardly say, This student's intelligence is insufficient. Please, teacher, help me top up. Luo Nan let out a rare laugh, but then the Hexa ear's communication sound and the teacher's call for the student next to him rang out at the same time. Poor Luo Nan. Even if he knew the color of the underwear of every student in the classroom, the teacher's standard answer was futile. Plus, the Hexa ear's belated communication was still distracting him. He stood up unsteadily for 2 seconds, but his eyes could only stare at the ceiling. He released the most classic emergency answer of a grade 13 student from the year 2096. Teacher, I'm asking for a leave. My stomach hurts. Luo Nan scuttled out amidst the roaring laughter of nearly 500 students in the large classroom. In just a few steps, he treated the experience in the classroom as an unreal dream. He quickly walked down the stairs and contacted Qin Ikuan at the same time. Arrange a car. We're going to Heavenly Herb Arts. Which one? God knows which one. They say it's at the Sky Luck Tower. Qin Ikuan understood and asked, Are we going now? Are we all going? Luo Nan looked at the electronic invitation that Zhang Yingying had sent back. His name was the only one written on it. He shook his head. You and me. Brother Gao Da and Cat Eyes can accompany Ruiwen. In any case, there's no need for security over there. The northernmost administrative district of Xia City was the Sky Terrace district. The city was built against the mountains, and the terrain was uneven. The three tallest buildings in the city, the tallest, the most expensive, and the most pretentious building, the Skyluck Tower, was located there. Luo Nan wanted to go to Heavenly Herb Arts, which was located in the Skyluck Tower. It was the kind of place that people with less money could not enter just by looking at the door number. Luo Nan and Qin Ikuan arrived at the Skyluck Tower 40 minutes later. They took the elevator to the 222nd floor. They exited the elevator. The south side of the long corridor was an entire row of high tensile glass walls. Although this floor only reached the chest area of the Skyluck Tower as a whole, due to the terrain, the entire Xia City seemed to be within sight when one looked south. Of course, this didn't matter to Luo Nan. The icy cold rainwater covered the entire area of his senses. He didn't care about this scenery. But in terms of his senses, there really was an area in front of him that was hazy and unclear. Plus, he was constantly getting closer to it. Over here. Zhang Yingying was over a dozen meters away. She waved her hand in this direction, afraid that Luo Nan wouldn't be able to see her. Today, Zhang Yingying walked with a light and familiar style. She wore an orange-red wool coat, leather pants, and short boots. She even wore a black-brimmed hat that gave off a rather artistic feeling. She seemed bright and beautiful, and she seemed lively. She stood there radiating with splendor. Heads turned to look at her off the charts. But after Luo Nan raised his hand to signal, his entire attention was drawn to the long-haired woman who was leaning against the glass wall and reading a book with her head lowered. Compared to Zhang Yingying's thick and heavy colors, this woman only wore a simple pair of jeans paired with a white linen sweater that was a bit too loose. It was as if she was still living in autumn. The light from the outside was slightly dim. The outline of the silhouette, the hanging curtain of hair, the lightly held scroll, and all sorts of other elements converged together to form a nearly perfect composition. Luo Nan didn't want to decipher anything. He just couldn't help but think at this moment. This woman reads a book and doesn't appreciate the scenery. This is because the world within the book is much more vast and profound than the simple scenery. Cough, that's what I think too. Qin Ikuan hissed from the side. It really is Her Majesty Empress Wu. She really was. Though the name of the invitation was a baffling charity art exhibition, Zhang Yingying, who had sent the invitation, was following the decree of Her Majesty Empress Wu. Her Majesty Empress Wu was undoubtedly waiting for him here. With this boss here, security work and the like really didn't have any meaning. Boss, Nanster and the others have arrived. Zhang Yingying was worried that Her Majesty Empress Wu would be engrossed in reading, so she reminded her. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't put on an act. She simply closed the book and held the scroll in her hand. She nodded to Luo Nan in greeting and smiled. Perhaps it was because of her makeup, but this woman didn't seem to have the dignified bearing of an extraordinary. Instead, she seemed like a cultured and refined teacher, or perhaps an artist. Luo Nan silently said 137 in his mind to rid himself of this misconception. Even now, he didn't know why Her Majesty Empress Wu would send him an invitation. He didn't know how he had offended Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luckily, the tone of the woman in front of him carried a bit of the sharpness that should be there. You're not slow, and it's quite a coincidence. The hateful ceremony just ended. Let's just go in. There was no need to introduce themselves. The four followed the sparse stream of people and slowly walked into the Heavenly Herb Art Gallery. This was clearly a charity art exhibition, but the security at the entrance was quite strict. There was a professional security company guarding the door, and one had to rely on an electronic invitation to enter. Each invited person was only allowed to bring one attendant. Luo Nan saw this scene and subconsciously felt that the art exhibited in the gallery was certainly an extraordinary masterpiece of art. He held his breath and didn't use his mental senses. He wanted to use the most traditional method to seriously appreciate the art. But this thought was completely corroded by the strange colors, the twisted lines, the exotic structures, and the eye-piercing designs that assaulted his face in half a minute. Damn, why didn't she tell me that this was an avant-garde art exhibition? Luo Nan blinked his eyes hard to eliminate the intense stimulation brought by the light. Her Majesty Empress Wu's soft voice entered his ears. I heard that you're a decent artist. I just have a bit of experience in sketching. Luo Nan wanted to be modest, but he was faced with all sorts of designs and drawings laid out in all directions. He couldn't help but spit out a sentence. I don't understand these styles, and I can't appreciate them. It's fine if you don't understand. In today's society, people can't understand paintings. It's fine as long as the explanation is self-justifying. A successful expression, a successful operation. In the end, this is a world that depends on the results. Her Majesty Empress Wu's voice wasn't loud, but she didn't deliberately lower her voice. It was hard to avoid some people giving her sidelong glances. However, they walked leisurely, and they soon pulled apart the distance between them and the people who were forcefully appreciating the paintings. The skill lies outside the painting. When you understand the cause and effect of this art exhibition, perhaps you will have a new evaluation of the value of the works inside. Chapter 529. Cause and Effect. Luo Nen didn't understand what was going on, and he urgently wanted to know the answer. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't have any intention of giving a lengthy explanation. It was time for the attendant to appear. Zhang Yingying was facing a certain painting. The reflection of the glass outside. She was fixing the position of her hat. She received an order from her boss, so she winked at Luo Nan and waved her hand. Right now, there are a total of 214 paintings and 67 other works on display in this art museum. Their creators include 15 city councillors, as well as over 40 councillors' relatives and good friends and the like. If I do some serious calculations, it probably covers a fifth of the seats on the city council. Is that so? Luo Nan was able to understand the meaning behind this. Zhang Yingying raised the brim of her hat and continued with a cadence in her voice. The organizers of the event believe that this will be a successful exhibition and charity auction. You definitely didn't see the attachment to the invitation. The starting price of every work is over 200,000. The highest can reach 2 million. People without a certain level of authority, credibility, and wealth can't even enter the door. The income from the art exhibition will all enter a specific foundation. It's a good-hearted foundation with operating expenses not exceeding 75%. The philanthropists who buy these works will pay such a large sum of money, but all they get in return is a dinner with the artists. Luo Nan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Just say it's a bribe. There's no need to beat around the bush. He wasn't the type of person who hated the world, but his childhood experiences didn't allow him to hold any positive expectations for the relationship between the government and the business. A light smack rang out. It was Her Majesty Empress Wu tapping his shoulder with a scroll. Luo Nen didn't understand. He looked at her in shock. Her Majesty Empress Wu smiled slightly. Don't be confused by Yingying's unprofessional way of speaking when you receive information. You should hear the results before making a judgment. Otherwise, it would be a waste of 2 points a day. Can you not bring up points? Luo Nan couldn't help but curse in his mind. Zhang Yingying directly voiced her protest. How am I unprofessional? Right now, he needs to know the answer. He doesn't need to chat about it. It's good to let him have a minute to truly think. Her Majesty Empress Wu gently combed her long hair. She looked extremely feminine, but her words were from one of the dirtiest corners of the world. This is a bribe. But more importantly, it is to probe the current stance of Xia City's bureaucracy. At the same time, there are also arrangements against the military. Just last night, the research and development project that the military and Bomer had cooperated for many years suddenly achieved a breakthrough. Once this outer space survival system was successful, it would effectively enhance the efficiency of the frontier development bases on the Moon, Mars, and Europa. The military could even directly dispatch Deep Blue Walkers to carry out individual expeditions, greatly increasing the efficiency of development. The progress of this project is 2 years ahead of schedule, which can save the aerospace army nearly 20 billion in research and development costs. By the way, your secretary's family should be able to make a small profit this time. Argument comes after the argument. Everything serves the argument. Though Her Majesty Empress Wu did not speak bluntly, Luo Nan still had a vague answer. Her Majesty Empress Wu concluded, if you add in the turmoil in the inner world, people from all walks of life will come one after another, forming a direct pressure. Then, this operation can be said to be well organized. Far better than the rubbish we're seeing now. It's the movement of those capitalists who have ideas about Rue Wen. Luo Nan completely understood what was going on. He also understood why Her Majesty Empress Wu had called him here. It was a substantial level of meaning. He subconsciously wanted to search the art gallery with his mental senses to see if he could catch the mastermind. But he soon came to a realization. He didn't recognize those people. Moreover, this was a comprehensive probing attack. Aside from the greedy people of the inner world, the other operations were all on the level of capital and politics. They were unseeable and untouchable. How could he touch them in a short time? The effect of psychology was enormous. Though Luo Nan had yet to truly make a move, he felt extreme disgust towards this baffling art exhibition. He walked through this seemingly elegant exhibition hall, but he felt as if he had stepped into a cesspool. Her Majesty Empress Wu's words revealed a needling edge at this time. In comparison, your way of doing things makes people quite speechless. I don't need to explain the specific analysis. You should be able to understand it yourself. Since your sketches are decent, why is your behavior in society like a child scribbling? You do whatever you want without a shred of logic? Luo Nan was stunned when he was suddenly reprimanded in front of his face. Zhang Yingying saw that he was a bit embarrassed and hurriedly said, "Boss, you have to look at the powers he faces. How many days has it been since he entered this circle? It's already pretty good for him to be able to counter every move in a muddle-headed situation. Talent is needed for planning, and conditions are even more important." Conditions. Her Majesty Empress Wu suddenly stood still, bringing the other three to a stop. Luo Nan felt Her Majesty Empress Wu's gaze focus on his face. You make people feel that you are worth the money. Unfortunately, upon closer examination, this might not be the actual output. Instead, it might be a new story in the capital market. Every day, there are stories of bubbles bursting in the world capital market, and even more bubbles blowing in. As a rational investor, we need to take a look right now and see if the project behind the story truly has the value to continue investing in. Her Majesty Empress Wu's words were straightforward. It was completely in the style of capital transactions. Frankly speaking, it was extremely incompatible with her elegant and free temperament. But Luo Nan didn't get too angry. She had already stood up for him against the extraordinary. What else could he do? What's more, it was born from formatting theory. Even if it was just a specious simulation, it was still something he could accept. There was only one point in his mind that was strange. Where had he heard these words before? The four of them stood in the aisle. The men couldn't be considered handsome, but the quality of the beauties was extremely high. They were quite eye-catching. Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't have the hobby of being admired like a work of art. She put away the scroll and continued forward. At the same time, she asked Luo Nan, "What makes you special?" Luo Nan didn't have a conclusion in his mind. He asked back, "Your Majesty, what do you think?" Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't beat around the bush. "I believe that you know the direction of your own development, and you are working hard towards it. Even more fortunate is that this direction has extremely high prospects and potential for development. There really aren't many lucky people like you. The vast majority of people in the world, including Yingying, don't know their true direction. They need to hit a nail, suffer setbacks, and even take a turn on the edge of life and death in order to understand. But at that time, the state of their lives and minds won't allow them to change." Zhang Yingying did her best to be the one to liven up the atmosphere. She voiced her protest. "Can you not use me as a negative example?" Her Majesty Empress Wu ignored her and said, "Special doesn't equal value. At least in a certain stage. You are one of the lucky few, but where is your greatest value? From the perspective of capital, you are the final result of your grandfather's theory. Before you, countless people have failed and died in order to verify this theory. Only you relied on a simple notebook. You relied on ability, willpower, and luck to survive in the end. Right now, there are quite a few people who want to see what happens next. They want to see whether or not a single copy of yours can ultimately become a successful example. Countless people will copy, imitate, and learn from you. But these people's gazes are extremely picky. Formatting theory isn't a rare project. It was severely exposed 20 years ago. The investors tried to industrialize it, but reality proved that this was a dead end. Then they found a spokesperson based on the reality of the situation. This spokesperson carried out a universal transformation of formatting theory, and that was Yen Hong and his experimental son. The birth of the archetype format represented a path for people to walk. But this path has been blocked for you. Luo Nan opened his mouth to respond. I never thought about walking this path. Your ambition is commendable. But what kind of path do you want to walk? From the perspective of an investor, a project that cannot be industrialized and cannot realize profits is worthless. From the perspective of a scholar, a theory that cannot obtain approval is a tragedy. Have you really thought about how you should walk your path from now on? You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.